My intro always hypes me up. Move forward here a little bit. Get hyped. Okay, this is episode 2, Enigmatic Earth, part 2. Hope you guys enjoyed part 1. I'll turn that down. Sound is good, thank you. Cug, I know you seen me on I know you saw me hanging out on X, posting a few things from last night. I've been busy. All right. Man, got some bad news. Found out from people in the Archaix X community. Alt Skull, you guys know he's a friend. I've been a guest on the Paranormies 3 or 4 times, sometimes with Martin. Paranormies have been on Archaix TV 3 or 4 times. And one of theirs just passed away in an auto accident by himself, left behind a wife and son. Reinhardt. So I'm just waiting on Alt. I know they're setting up some type of fund for his family. You know, burials and all that are expensive. So I'm waiting to hear from that. I know some of y'all remember Reinhardt. Great guy. All the Paranormies, great guys. That sucks. But this just happened. It was like, I found out very quickly as soon as it was posted. I know Alt Skull's in shock right now. At least that's what he tells me. I believe him. So. All right, let's see. I will attend to that matter later. Heart goes out to the family and the Paranormies. Those guys are free thinkers for sure. Hello, Jahara. Just seen you pop in. Thank you, moderators. Lacey, Adam Cook. See. I seen Cug's name again. Cug, I know I got to get on top. I got to get on top of the children stuff, man. I got to learn to delegate more. Just not easy. Nelson Perez, I seen you be reposting. You get all excited when you see a new chart. There's the Paranormies brand new website. It was just Mr. C put it up. All right, thank you, McKeer. So we covered a lot of topics yesterday. We're going to cover some of those again, but we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to show more material. You're going to see a lot of new stuff today too. Look at totally different books. As a matter of fact, there is no reason not to share my screen right now and just get straight on into it. So, let's see. Sharing my screen. We'll be looking into mysteries in history, a journey through the great unanswered questions of our time. A lot of these books are mainstream, but they do show us the pictures that we need, because I need to correct things that are in the captions. I'm going to do that quite a few times in this video. I'm going to show you what the uniformitarian interpretation is and how it's not founded on anything but speculation. It's just like NASA. They just totally make up stuff, and because they're scientists, you have to believe them. So I'm going to show you the captions in some of these books on what their explanations are. Then I'm going to tell you what the real explanation is, and it's going to resonate with you because the truth resonates. You vibrate on that frequency and you accept it. And you know, okay, well, why, man, Jason just opened my mind. That is exactly what I'm seeing here. How the hell did I let them gaslight me into believing this? Yeah, we're going to go through a few of those episodes in this presentation today. We'll be looking at Quest for the Past. I read this book like 10 years ago. Fantastic book. Still have it. Amazing Answers to the Riddles of History. This is a really good book. Quest for the Past. Also, Echoes of Time, A World History. Now, this is a hard book to get through. It's very thick. It's very big, but it's got some gems in there. It was difficult to get through for the simple fact is that it's written by communists. It's written by those who are trying to portray history in a fashion for which it did not unfold. And they're doing it for socio-political reasons. Mysteries of the Past. Very good book. We'll be looking at this one too today. We'll be looking at Vanishings. Library of Curious and Unusual Facts. Now, I have some other books from this series, because the Library of Curious and Unusual Facts is a series of books. This one's called Vanishings. It's pretty good. We're going to be looking into this one. And last but not least, Unsolved Mysteries of the Past. There's your labyrinth right there. A lot of hidden meaning in that labyrinth. Ask Daedalus. All right. So we're going to get right on into it because we got a whole lot to look at. And we got more today than we did yesterday. But the video is probably not going to be as long as yesterday's because we were kind of just breaking into this little trilogy. So we're going to start. This is going to meander around. We're going to be retouching up on topics from yesterday, and when we leave a topic in this video, we might return to it because a different book is showing something from another perspective. So the very first thing we're going to go with is this is the uniformitarian explanation by Egyptologists of how the Great Pyramid was built. Now, all of this looks good. It all looks good, and it's persuasive because it's just like Charles Fort said in 1919 in Book of the Damned. When any type of genuine mystery comes to the surface in the public mind, there's always someone who comes forward with an explanation that's just good enough to get the collective to go ahead and move on to something else. Why? Because now we tap into a psychological phenomenon of Friedrich Nietzsche, who told us in Beyond Good and Evil, he said, when a matter becomes clear, it ceases to concern us. This means that the establishment uses human psychology against us. Once they provide an explanation and they just stick with the lie over and over and over and over, it becomes the truth for the collective. It's the free thinker, it's the truther that doesn't resonate with it. But that doesn't matter, because in this construct, this predator versus prey ecosphere, we will always be the minority, so it doesn't even matter. What you're looking at here is pure fantasy. It's absolute fantasy. The ramp itself would have required the same amount of engineering, balance, structural durability as building the pyramid itself. The ramp may have been the ramp because the engineering required to build the ramp and make sure the weight distribution was right so it didn't collapse under the pressure of added weight and weight being moved over and over and over. The engineering to do that was equal to the pyramid itself, and the mass required to make the ramping system is almost equal to the pyramid itself, and there is no evidence anywhere on the Giza Plateau of these ramp systems that have ever been done. This was just really it's ingenuitive. It's it's the only plausible explanation for how they built these structures, because in a uniformitarian frame of reference, the ramp is necessary for men pulling this 5-ton block. It takes all these men to pull it up this ramp. This is why they came up with the ramp system, because they believed that it was manpower was the motive force moving 2.5 million blocks in between 2.5 tons and 70 tons in weight. That's what's in the Great Pyramid. And this 2.5 million stones were all glued together with an adhesive 1/50th of an inch thick that has micro traces of beryl in it. Somebody had created a geopolymer glue that is stronger than the limestone blocks that it binds together. This is the uniformitarian perspective in its total BS. We have more evidence from the machined stone in the Great Pyramid that the Great Pyramid, the Giza complex itself, was built using machines. This is the subject matter of previous Archaix videos, where we show the machine marks, where we show the fracture quarrying that was done by machines, how they fracture quarried whole molds off of living rock. And we have all these people that are absolutely amazed by all these things they find in South America and all over the world, in Asia, that they have no idea what are these weird shapes that are precision laser tolerances. The boring holes are absolute laser perfect. Why are they here? What would they use that for? And it's because you're looking at the photo negative of what was actually there. Whoever quarried all this removed the materials, and we don't know what they were really making because we haven't seen them. We haven't seen what they made. That civilization hasn't survived. Maybe they took all that stuff in the underworld. Maybe it's under an ocean bed now. We don't know. We don't know. What's left behind are just the molds. So no men pulling sleds built this 454-foot monolith. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. The precision, this is engineering precision. The Great Pyramid itself is a machine, and we have shown this as well. It has metal parts. We've shown this as well. It has a track system in the Grand Gallery where something moved up and down, creating high pressure. It has a locking system in the antechamber right here between the Grand Gallery, where pressure was built and then released through a lock mechanism system here, and then into the King's Chamber, where scientists and Christopher Dunn as well, an engineer, realized that an immense amount of pressure had blown out from the King's Chamber. Under this incredible pressure and weight of the stone itself, the King's Chamber was still all the walls blown out, the ceiling and the floor, everything blown out half an inch. That's a lot of pressure. That's a huge amount of pressure. So yeah, again, this is Davidson's relieving chambers right here. No Egyptian hieroglyphs have ever been found inside the Great Pyramid until 1837. All this had been studied by the Muslims, the Caliph of Baghdad, Al-Mamun and his men, then Frederick Norton Lewis in the 1700s, Robert Menzies, John Taylor, Adam Rutherford, David Davidson, engineer, Napoleon's men in 1799. They've all been in and out the Great Pyramid. No Egyptian hieroglyphs were ever found until Colonel Howard Weiss was losing funding, and on his last 2 days in Egypt before he was going to have to return to England in disgrace, because he had lost all the money for the Egyptian campaign to study the Great Pyramid, and he was going to lose a lot of face. He and another man named Humphrey Brewer painted the cartouches in the relieving chambers. That's what these are right here. These are the relieving chambers. The reason they're designed that way with rough-hewn giant megalithic 70-ton blocks is because this is what helps relieve all the pressure from all the stone higher up in the structure. This immense amount of weight of stone right here, these air pockets between these megaliths right here relieve a whole bunch of that pressure. That's why they're called the relieving chambers. Well, Colonel Howard Weiss tunneled up into the relieving chambers, painted these deals, and then had his men discover when they tunneled up into there, he pretended like he didn't know those hieroglyphs there, and he had his men discover them. So later when when Humphreys Brewer saw that all this was getting out of hand and all this stuff was like, hey, man, you know what? He became sensationalized. Colonel Howard Weiss became a world phenomenon. He became super famous in England behind proving that Khufu built the pyramid. So, because he put the cartouche of Khufu in, even though he made a mistake. Later, Humphreys Brewer played whistleblower and gave the whole thing up and said, man, we painted that shit. But you won't find that. You'll find it in specialist literature, but you're not going to find it in Egyptological uniformitarian books. They're not going to tell you that. So, this is a perfect example of the ceremonial beard that was attached. Remember the Chinese said that they're the kings that ruled before the flood. This is Chinese literature. They have a great flood too, and it's at the exact same time as the biblical flood, and it's 23rd century, 22nd century BC. And the Chinese Dragon King dynasty collapsed. Well, they were called Dragon Kings because they were dragon-faced. Dragon doesn't mean they had reptile faces. They didn't have reptile faces because the Chinese scholars will tell you quick that it was a description of having a beard, because the ancient Chinese of the pre-Shang dynasty couldn't grow facial hair. Very smooth skin. So the Dragon Kings were a different culture, and they ruled over them, and they were known for being bearded, like Lombards. They had long beards. After the Cataclysm, different cultures copied this, and cultures that had a genotype that wasn't able to grow facial hair would make wooden beards or golden beards and ceremonial beards, because when they sat on the throne, it was like borrowing the authority of the ancient pre-flood kings, the Sumerian Anunnaki, the Anuna, or the Dragon Kings of China. So this was these ceremonial beards are real popular in Egyptian deal. All the different dynastic periods. Look, they couldn't grow any facial hair, so they have a fake beard attached. This was to show that they were still ruling by the authority of the old world pharaohs, the old world kings. Here's another one, another fake beard. Yeah, some Egyptian tombs even have backup fake beards. Fake beards are in all the ossuaries and stuff like that. In case one fake beard, one of their fake beards is no good, they can get another one. Sandals. This is the smooth-faced Egyptians. They were just like the Chinese, just like the South Americans of the Urubamba Valley. They could not grow facial hair. Here's another, right here. Ritual beard. The false beard was used by the pharaoh on grand occasions. It was identified with Osiris. Well, the problem with that scenario, that's another gaslighting. It may have been identified with Osiris worship, but Osiris worship didn't come about until after the children of Set were no longer regarded as important in ancient Egypt. And this would have been after the Amarna period. So Osiris and Isis worship came late in Egyptian antiquity. So the false beards go all the way back to the first dynasties. That almost looks like an Amarna statue. That almost looks like Akhenaten. Here it is again. This is the standard Egyptological deal. Look at the amount. Look how tiny these guys are. Look how gigantic the ramp is. The ramp is taller than any buildings the Egyptians were making back then. Look at the ramp. The years would have taken to make the ramps it's preposterous. The ramp theory only came about because they're steadily pushing this nonsense that men were pulling these blocks, when we've seen all the evidence in the world that those blocks were moved at high velocity. There were tractors, probably 600 men with heavy equipment probably built the Great Pyramid. And they did it 4,000 4,500 years ago. So I'm showing this map because, again, this is a uniformitarian publication, but I'm showing this map here because it's a real good example of the whitewashing that you'll get from the scientific community and from the Egyptologists. And what I mean is from this map, you see it says Lower Egypt at the top, and you see Cairo, and you see Step Pyramid, Saqqara, you see Bent Pyramid of Dashur up here, but it doesn't give you any other. It doesn't give you any other pyramids, and there's a reason for this. Keep going down. This is nothing but empty desert all down the Nile. This is all empty desert. River Nile, Western deal. Then you get down here to the Royal Cemetery of Abydos, which is, it's the oldest, but it's not even a part of traditional Egyptian civilization. You keep going further, and you finally make it to Karnak, Luxor, which is known as Thebes, Edfu, Esna. Here's Kom-Obo. This is Aswan. This is ancient Waset, known as Kemishia. This is the original Egypt. This is the Egypt of Hollywood. This is where they buried their pharaohs. This is where the Valley of the Kings are. This is where Tutankhamun was buried. This is where all the pharaohs were buried. This is Egyptian cities that you see in Hollywood presentations. This is where they are. But you know what's not down here? There are no pyramids anywhere here for hundreds of miles. None. Jason, but we all know there's like 137, 138 pyramids been found in Egypt. Of course they have been. But that's Lower Egypt. This right here is Upper Egypt. It's 450 miles away from Giza. Way over here. Do you know how long 450 miles is in the ancient world? Have you seen the distance between Sumer and Babylon? Have you seen the distance between the capital of Babylonia, Babylon, and the capital of Assyria, Nineveh? Have you seen how short those distances are for the capitals of ancient empires? What about the capital of Mitanni? It's called Mari. Have you seen the distance from Mari to Babylon, from Mari to Nineveh? 450 miles is a world away in the ancient world. That's why there is a vast empty desert of 400 miles between Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. It's huge empty. The pyramids are all at Lower Egypt, and they're ancient. They're way older than all this down here that you see in Upper Egypt, which is the Hollywood version of Egypt. Karnak, Luxor, Waset, Thebes. All these cities, Edfu, every single one of these are post-Cataclysm. All these cities were founded and built after 2239 BC. And if you go deep into the writings of Sumerologist Professor L.A. Waddell, you'll find out that the first 5 Egyptian dynasties are no different than the first 5 Sumerian dynasties. They're the same kings at the same time. Here is a forensic reconstruction, scientifically conducted, of an Egyptian based off a mummy. Now, I don't know if it's real or not. I know a bunch of black people get pissed off when you go to referring that the ancient Egyptians were all black, and I don't know where they get that information from, but the truth is there were no black pharaohs until the 26th dynasty. And anybody who has ever done any history on ancient Egypt has done their homework will know that the first time that blacks ruled Egypt was the 26th dynasty. It's called the Nubian dynasty. It's also the last dynasty Egypt ever had, because the Nubian dynasty collapsed the economy. And when the economy was collapsed, the Assyrians came in, the Persians came in, the Macedonians came in, the Greeks came in, the Ptolemies took over for a good while. Enter Cleopatra, the last female pharaoh. She wasn't even a pharaoh because all the dynasties had collapsed. She was just the ruler of Egypt at the time during the Roman period. But by the time the Romans even came on the scene, before Alexander the Great of Macedonia brought the Greeks to world renown throughout the Mediterranean, before any of that, the Persians took Egypt. But the Persians only took Egypt after the 26th dynasty collapsed the entire infrastructure of Egypt. So Egypt was called the two kingdoms for a reason. The upper Egypt was to the south. This was the dark red-skinned traditional Egyptians. But lower Egypt on the Mediterranean was Mitannian. This is why they called them Hyksos. It was a derogatory term. They didn't like them, shepherd kings. They didn't like them at all. And the depictions on the Egyptian, the racial portraits on the Temple of Karnak specifically showed them as Tamahu. They were much taller than traditional Egyptians, and they had very white skin, and they had very long beards. These were the rulers of On. On was formerly called by a Sumerian name. The Sumerian name was Anu, A-N dot capital U, Anu. That was the original name of that city. Later, it became On, O-N. After that, it was Grecianized to Heliopolis. Heliopolis is where the Mansion of the Phoenix was. The Mansion of the Phoenix housed the Bin stone. You guys know the story. We've already talked about all that. But here is a reconstructed racial portrait from an Egyptian tomb. The problem is we don't know what tomb, because if it was in the deep south, it would have been of the basically of Aurignacian red race in central to southern Egypt. In northern Egypt, it would have been more Caucasoid, because all of Libya was Caucasians. Mauritania was all Caucasian. Even as late as the founding of the United States Navy, when we went and fought the Barbary pirates. Dark swarthy skin, but super light eyes and super blonde and red hair. Those traits have remained in North Africa for thousands of years. So, yeah, North Africa is very different. It's been very Mediterranean. So I don't know why people get triggered about all this, but it was widely known in the days of Leonard Woolley when he was excavating the tombs of Sumer and he was excavating the crypt complexes of Sumer beneath Ur, and then in ancient Egypt he found the exact same people, red-haired people who were very tall with more elongated skulls, and there was just nothing African about them. And these are in the very oldest tombs of Egypt, and they're in the very oldest tombs of Sumer. But this is you may as well call those pre-cataclysm. But here's a racial portrait right here of the standard Egyptian. I don't know if it would have been North Africa or Southern Africa. I'm going to say this is probably a good amalgamation of North Africa. It would have been lower Egypt on the Mediterranean where the pyramids were. I could be wrong. So this is interesting because we're talking about Atlantis a lot. And there's a place in Spain, the ancient ruins of Tartessos. Mm-hmm. And there are researchers who kind of believe that the stories of Atlantis may match the ruins that have been found in Tartessos. And this is on the coast of Spain. Many books have been published about the Spanish ruins. I don't know if I agree with it. I just want you to know that it does fit Plato's narrative better than the Archaix structure of Jimmy Corsetti, which is just a geological formation, and it's in the middle of the Sahara Desert and does not qualify as being beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This does qualify as being beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic. So this book here that's talking about Atlantis, though, it's really interesting because they are not trying to hear anything. These scholars, all the scholars mentioned here, are all linking Atlantis to the Santorini detonation. When Santorini blew, the volcano Santorini on the island of Thera blew and it destroyed the Crete civilization. That's when the Atlantis story unfolded. That's when the war of the Atlanteans against Athens. That's when all these scholars put it. No one is taking seriously the anachronism except Graham Hancock and Jimmy Corsetti and Billy Carson. No one's taking it seriously. Oh, Randall Carlson is too. But no one among the learned, the educated, those who've actually done the homework, would ever say that Atlantis is dated to the Younger Dryas period 9,000 years before Solon. The very fact that these men still spew this out of their mouths is embarrassing. It's embarrassing, especially with all the scholarship that has come forth to show that I've shown on my channel. I have showed chapter and verse from all these scholars that show that it was 13th century BC and the 9,000 years was 9,000 moons. Solon got it wrong. Athens didn't even exist in the Younger Dryas period. It is absolutely moronic. So this is a reconstruction of Tartessos right here. Look at this. Look at this. Could be some history to this. I don't know. And we're jumping over to Easter Island in the South Pacific, not too far from Pumapunka in the Andes in the Tiwanaku region right here. Look at the size of the moa. Look at the size of these statues. All these different statues. Now, what I found really interesting is that all these giant statues on Easter Island, according to Thor Heyerdahl, he's got 4 books about it. All these statues, hundreds of them, were carved in situ and removed and taken to the bottom of the island. They were marched down the volcano to the coast, except 276 statues were specifically designed to stay at the top of the volcano looking inward at 7 seats that were carved into the volcanic rock. What in the hell? 7 seats. We got the 7 dragon kings. We got the 7 Anunnaki. We got the 7 sages of the ancient Near East. We got the 7 builder gods. What's going on? We got the 7 kings of Sumer on the Ashmolean Sumerian king list. 7 kings ruled. As soon as the 8th sat on the throne, the flood washed away the Sumerian Pentapolis. The 8th king never got to rule. That's why in the book of Revelation, the 8th king is one of the 7, and he comes back to finish his rule. He never got it. And then what happens in the book of Revelation? The dragon comes down like a flood. So his rule gets messed off too. But isn't it interesting that I think it's Raku Raku. One of the books he's describing is 207. Archaix veterans know what that number is. 276 of these statues were specifically kept in the volcano, and they're all facing inward, and they're facing 7 niches where 7 men sat. 7 thrones. That is crazy. But 276 is 138 plus 138. And we already know what happened to Easter Island in the month of May of 1687 BC. The Phoenix appeared on its 138-year timeline, and it just totally wiped out the whole Pacific Empire, all of Melanesia, Micronesia, all of Oceania, Hawaii, the Carolines, the Isle of Yap, everything wiped out. So crazy. So another feature here. You see this at Göbekli Tepe. At Göbekli Tepe, you see men who are pillars. There are pillars at Göbekli Tepe that are in the form of men, and they have the same posture. Their arms are straight by their side, but right there at their belt, their hands and long fingers fold over the pillar. Identical to the statues at Tiwanaku and Bolivia in the Altiplano of the Andes, and also identical to Göbekli Tepe. And yet, Our gaslighting scientists want to try and tell us Göbekli Tepe's 10,000 years old, while Easter Island's only 1,000 years old. Remember, they got bird cult effigies, all that. We'll see it here in a little while. The raising of the Moai. This is a uniformitarian perspective right here. They don't know. They weren't there. They don't know how they raised these Moai. The reason I have a problem with this scenario of man labor doing all this like this and not machines. The reason I have an issue with this is because this still does not explain how they fracture quarried these statues in situ straight out of living rock. We've seen it. Thor Heyerdahl's documented it. They literally carved the whole statue where it was sitting, and then they carved around the statue and left a thin chase of rock connecting the statue to the living rock. And then how did they separate it and hold the weight up at the same time without breaking any of them, and then erect them and move them all the way down the volcano? The quarrying, how they quarried them, needs to be answered before you try some silly little uniformitarian description of how they moved them. So it's called practicing exclusions. You totally ignore one mystery so you can address another. Again, Easter Island. Here's bird cult effigies. Again, we're dealing with a culture that was worldwide. How do we know? Because we found the cromlechs, the dolmens. We have found the pillars all over Tonga, all over the islands of Melanesia, Micronesia, Polynesia, Oceania. All these island chains contain ruins. David Hatcher Childress, William Corliss, so many different, Barry Fell, so many different amazing researchers have all documented that these ruins are found scattered all over islands in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific. Find an island out in the Pacific, you think no one's ever been there, go on there and you find these megalithic giant trilithons. Like, well, how the hell do they do that? How the hell do they do that? Why is there a flat-topped pyramid in the middle of this island and there's nothing here but about 3 acres of trees? What was it for? David Hatcher Childress had a pretty interesting deal because so many of these flat-top little pyramidions have been found across the Pacific. His idea was in ancient times, vimanas were some type of helium drive or helium balloon, and the ancients were literally flying or floating, island hopping, and those little pyramidal platforms are so small, but they're so strong. All they were there for was for somewhere for you to land, tie down, and moor yourself to it. Tie it down, and you're good. It's a landing platform. Get off the vehicle for a little while. Then let go of it and go on about your business. And maybe these little island chains served as landing platforms for like zeppelins that were going from continent to continent. This isn't me making this up. This is other researchers putting all the facts together because these architectural anomalies do not make sense. But what does make sense is the same artistic styles in the megalithic building culture are found all over the world. Göbekli Tepe has artwork that looks just like what you find on Easter Island. Not just the pillars with the folded fingers. That's a very definitive feature. To have those fingers, to have the hands forward and the fingers folded over the waist. Yeah, that's very definitive. And it's almost an exact duplicate from Göbekli Tepe and Easter Island, but nobody wants to talk about it. Just like they don't want to talk about the handbags that have been seen at Göbekli Tepe mirror the handbags that have been seen in 2000 BC art all around the world. Not 8,000, not 10,000 BC art. 2000 BC art. A 6,000 year difference. It's crazy. So, to their credit, this is the only structure in the Americas that looks like this. It is claimed that it's Mayan. It's claimed that it's Mayan. So I'm going to have to tell you what I know. This structure is very sophisticated and advanced. It's also called the observatory by Mayan scholars. At one time, these may have been Mayan ruins, but we have a cover-up in the New World. And that cover-up is very well documented. I have shown the pictures on my channel. Many of you remember when I showed the exact same place right here where a culture, so like Syro-Phoenician or maybe Syro-Libyan, some culture of mariners from the Mediterranean was here. They were trading here. And many of the structures in Mayan cities that were later rebuilt by another culture that moved in, that brought Mediterranean dialects and Mediterranean artifacts moved in, and they had a symbol that was so different than anything else you saw in the Americas. And they put their symbol, stone plaques, on the buildings. And this was one of those buildings. I showed the picture on my channel. It is a stork. It is a beautiful Phoenician artistic stork. It's probably what was on their sails, on their ships, on their corn, whatever. But this is what, whoever these people after the Maya that came, the reason we know somebody rebuilt a lot of these structures is because many of the stones have date stamps that are in Libyan, that are in Mediterranean languages. There's even Roman sigils that have been found. I'm not making this up. All this can be verified. There are Mayan ruins that have writing inside the bricks that show who the brick manufacturer was. And those brick manufacturers would have been in different areas here in the New World. For some reason, for about a 250-year period, there was a high volume traffic in between the Mediterranean and Mexico. So maybe I should do a video on that. But you should read the Lost City series by David Hatcher Childers, because not only does he talk about these things, but he also provides you the authors for other books that give more detail about it. So I'm providing this image. I took a picture of this image simply to show you, because I get a lot. I get a lot of I catch a lot of flack from people who get offended, man. It's always cultural. It's always cultural. Man, you know, I don't get it, but you know what? And people get mad when I tell them, you know, they say, "Oh, Jason, man, you don't understand, man. There's a bigger pyramid in Mexico than the one in Egypt." And I say, "No, there's not." And they get pissed because they read it in a book. They get pissed because they saw it in a documentary. They get pissed because Graham Hancock said it on Ancient Apocalypse. So they think I'm lying, but there's not. There isn't a bigger pyramid in the world than right there, the Great Pyramid of Egypt. But Jason, what about the one over there in Europe they're talking about in what's it called? Autodidactic went over there. For a while it was real popular. Oh, damn it, man. I can't believe I can't remember. Romania. The pyramid over there in Europe, Romania. Somebody's gonna say it. Somebody's gonna say it in the chat here in a minute. My memory. It's so unimportant to me. That's why I can't remember. Bosnia. Thank you, Bosnia. Now, before I trigger you guys, you need to understand my thinking. You have to understand my thinking. I know for a fact, because Mexican archaeologists have long published this, that the Pyramid of the Sun right there in Mexico that you see that has more mass than the Great Pyramid of Egypt is only 213 feet tall. It's not as tall as the Great Pyramid, which is 454 feet. But that's not why the Pyramid of the Sun is not bigger. The height is not what excludes it. What excludes it is the fact is that they have tunneled into the Pyramid of the Sun and found 4 previous existing structures. 4 smaller pyramids. Every time a cataclysm, earthquake happens, or it just, the culture abandons, a new culture comes in and rebuilds, they make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico is actually a result of 5 structures. That's not a true pyramid. Cholula is the same. It's 2 structures. It's the same. The Great Pyramid of Egypt is 203 laser precision levels of blocks 2.5 million blocks, all glued together with an adhesive 1/50th of an inch thick, that if enough time was given, the blocks would decay, but the glue would stay and still form a pyramid. That's how hard it is. We don't know what it is, but it's synthetic. It's not natural. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands alone. But Jason, what about Bosnia? The Bosnia pyramid's way bigger. I'm going to tell you now, anybody can terraform a mountain. It's not a pyramid. Just because you take a pre-existing geological structure and you carve it into faces does not make it a pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Egypt is 203 levels of precision blocks, all stacked. Every level has to be perfect just to get the next level on to make it perfect. Every single one of the 203 levels have to be laser perfect in order for it to work. Other Egyptian pyramids that were built 1,000 years after the Great Pyramid have all already collapsed. Every single one of them. Why? Because they didn't know the science. They didn't have the technolithic engineering to do what was done with the original pyramids at Giza. They're all copies. So that's why they've all collapsed. Great Pyramid hasn't collapsed at all. It's only been damaged. Why? Because 340 years it was about 300 feet under the Mediterranean, meaning 150 feet were above the water. But you can see the crest line. You can see where the waves beat the hell out of it for centuries. You can see it. All up here, though, it's smooth because it was preserved. All underneath it, it decayed. All that decayed. High salination. It's not because the Mediterranean surface came up. That's another one of my that's another issue a lot of my critics have. They say, Jason, we don't have any evidence the Mediterranean flooded that high. It would have flooded the entire world if it was that high. And I agree with you, but I never said it did. From the very beginning, I said that in 2239 BC, the entire North African plate suffered subsidence. The same thing happened in India. India had a third of itself sheared off, and that's why even today they still have legends of a submarine kingdom off the west coast of India. Same thing happened at the exact same time. 2239 BC. It's when the Deccan Traps were created in India. Massive lava flows that resurfaced a huge area of India. It's when the Empty Quarter was created in Saudi Arabia, one of the greatest, most mysterious deserts in the world. Because underneath all the sands is evidence of infrastructure and giants and all kinds of things. All these were created at the exact same time. The North African plate descended 300 feet, which from a geographical perspective is negligible. It's nothing. These things have happened all over the world and many times. The whole plate just sank 300 feet, which made the Mediterranean rush in. 340 years later was the year 1899 BC, and the plate from an earthquake went up. And when it did, it pushed the Mediterranean back. What was created? The Nile Delta. The Nine Bows, the area of Goshen, was created in a day from that earthquake. That's what happened. And then the ancients remember when a giant dog guarded the holy mountain near the nine rivers. That's the Aztec myth of the soul's journey in the underworld, in the land of the dead. You had to get past the dog who guarded the head of nine rivers in the underworld. Yeah, and the dog guarded the holy mountain, which the holy mountain was what you needed to get through in order to get to the next life. The Aztecs basically believed the exact same thing the Egyptians did. Yeah, same thing the Greeks did. The Greeks believed you had to get by Cerberus. You had to get by Cerberus to get across the river Styx and not drown in hell and the river Acheron, and you get ferried across to get a gate to the other side and survive Tartarus. And the ancient Egyptian theology was virtually the same. Anubis, the dog-headed deity, was your guardian and your guide in the underworld, in the kingdom of Seeker. And there was a labyrinth there, but a soul that was holy was able to get through that labyrinth. And when that soul found the gate of Rostal, that soul was given admittance through the gate of Rostal and come across the scales of Anubis and the heart, or the key, or the ka, the soul of the deceased. would have the soul would be weighed against a feather to see if it was righteous. And if it was righteous, that soul was transported to the stars, which would have been a whole nother construct, a whole nother world. This was Egyptian theology. So anyway, I went on a tangent talking about that Great Pyramid. You guys know I get excited about that Great Pyramid. Fact. Some of you astrologers are going to love this. To test the validity of astrology, researcher Edmund Van Dusen charted the relationship between the date of birth and profession of 163,953 individuals. That's a huge pool for a test. In the United States and Canada, he found there were indeed statistically significant correlations. Librarians tended to be born in Libra, bankers in Virgo, lawyers in Gemini, and army officers in Leo and Scorpio. Imagine that. I knew you astrologers are going to get a kick out of that. Now, this is an oversimplification of this guy's research, but I'm pretty sure if some of you Google Edmund von Dusen, if you're into astrology, you can probably find a PDF of his original output. And for astrology purposes, I'm pretty sure that the output, it probably merits a whole video. Some YouTuber needs to get on top of that and do a whole video about it. I think that's pretty interesting. So the Olmec heads, also, I've also brought it to your attention over the years that the Olmec heads aren't, the history that we've been given for them isn't exactly true. So an older culture was there prior to the busts, prior to the heads appearing. The stone was already there, but it was in another form. After the Typhon flood of 2239 BC, we have a lot of evidence of the helolithic maritime empire. This helolithic maritime empire is the subject matter of W.J. Perry's book from 1923 called Children of the Sun. He concludes after 551 pages that every single dynasty in the entire world collapsed in 1688 BC. This was the Ogygian deluge that I have got so many books and videos about. So it was during this period, the 552-year Phoenix cycle period between the Typhon flood or the flood of Noah, the day the sky fell, the collapse of the vapor canopy, and, which is the biblical flood, 2239 BC caused by the Phoenix, and the 552 years to 1687 BC, the Ogygian deluge. It's in between this time that the survivors of the pre-flood world, they still had a lot of their information, their knowledge intact. Even though their infrastructure was collapsed, they had the information. And it only took about 200 years to bounce back. And when they bounced back, they did with a vengeance. By the year 2000 BC, urban cities were popping up everywhere. Sumer, Akkad, Elam, the Urubamba Valley, the Yangtze Valley in China, the Urubamba Valley of South America, all throughout Ecuador. Where else? Mining was continued from the pre-flood world in the Great Lakes area. Although there wasn't any Great Lakes back in the time, it was all mining district, and it's the only area in the world where vast amounts of copper have been found on the surface. And this is a huge mining operation that was going on around 2000 BC. So all this was happening, and cities were popping up everywhere. Human population was exploding. I call it the helolithic maritime empire. And W.J. Perry calls them the Children of the Sun dynasties. So the reason he calls them that is because something new had happened in the world. With the great flood of Noah, something new happened in Egypt. It was the appearance of Horus, the sun. In Sumer, it was the appearance of Shamash, of Utu Shamash. This is why the flood hero was named Utu-Napishtim, because the sun was very new, although Sumerian history was old. So they had just come out of a vapor canopy world, and the vapor canopy collapsed and caused the flood. So now that we have a new timeline involving the sun. The sun's out. So this is Helio. Helio was sun. The Heliolithic maritime empire were amazing in stonework, and they were building megalithic cities all over the world. They were working on Tiwanaku, Cuzco, Ollantaytambo, whatever it's called, the huge fortress in South America. Hundreds of places throughout Ecuador and Mexico, in South America, Bolivian Altiplano, all these places they were just doing it. Awesome places like Mohenjo-Daro and Lerac, Sipar, Uruk, Mitanni, Mari, Hattusis, Urartu, also Baalbek. They were just building all these amazing places that people have built careers now just showing pictures on social media of all these megalithic structures. So as they're building all of this, they employed their science. They learned the reason they were building polygonal architecture is because they had learned from the Great Flood, from the collapse of the vapor canopy, the day the sky fell, which was also a bunch of earthquakes. They learned real quick that the old technolithic type architecture would not stand earthquakes. So polygonal, all kinds of different shaped boulders that form fitted together, that is earthquake proof architecture. It survives better. But there was another thing they did. They made these spheres out of very crystalline rock. They only chose crystalline rock, any type of rock with a real high crystal content, and they made these spheres perfect. They have been measured by scientists, and it blows people's mind to see that these spheres are perfectly at pi 3.1416. And it's almost impossible without a machine to do that. It is impossible without a machine to do it. You can't do it. Can't do it with a hammer and chisel. But they are absolutely smooth, perfect spheres. And no one, archaeologists in Ecuador, in southern Mexico, in Veracruz State, all throughout the old Olmec areas, they didn't understand what the hell they were for. This is way before any of these carved busts, any of these faces. There were all these perfect spheres all over the Americas. And it was some researchers in the 1970s that figured it out because an eyewitness. They had long recorded the traditions. They had long recorded all the things about it. But it wasn't until right before some minor earthquakes in Ecuador that somebody Veracruz, right outside of Veracruz, it was some minor earthquakes in the 60s or 70s when it was noticed that those spheres started putting off a green electricity. Those perfect spheres started just emitting a duomer, like a little aura that was a green type of electricity. Mm-hmm. And no one really knew what was really going on. But the locals told them, oh, you need to come out from your home. Almost everybody's living in old stone structures. So the people all come outside and all that, and there's some tremors, a little earthquake, it's over with. And there's no more light emitting from those stone spheres. It's like, I believe it's called piezoelectric discharge. So anyway, these spheres had a function in the ancient world. Can you imagine what that function would be in a vapor canopy environment under higher pressure when there's a lot more moisture in the air, there's a lot more electricity in the air, there's a lot more oxygen in the air? Can you imagine what type of light those hot crystalline stones would have put out when the earth started emitting energy because it's about to cause an earthquake? Earthquakes are discharging energy. That energy is transferred through those perfect spheres. So anyway, this is all in old books. Anybody can read about these in Harold T. Wilkins' books, David Hatcher Childress' books. This is all old news. So what I brought to the table years ago was, it's always been a mystery how these busts just suddenly appeared. There's no culture here that did them. There was these spheres everywhere. And through cataclysms, a lot of those spheres sank into the jungles and they just disappeared. Rubble from buildings and earthquakes collapsed. And, thousands of these spheres have been found now. But the prominent spheres that were in the courts that could be seen by everybody were carved into these faces, but not by the original cultures. A few researchers have published some very controversial images that have been seen, that have been photographed on Mayan friezes. One of those is David Hadcher Childress. He's not the only one. But there are bearded guys with helmets, with backpacks, holding apparatus, and it looks like they're spraying stone. They're spraying. It looks like what they're doing. This is on Mayan friezes. Equally mysterious is that right around that time, it shows Caucasians bearded, without the helmets, all body parts chopped up, hands, all of them chopped up, and with them chopped up are Black African body types, not indigenous Americans, but guys with faces just like these. So it's always been a mystery, and no one's really linked it all together. And some researchers got together looking at all these disparate pieces and putting it together with the local indigenous legends and traditions, and the whole story came out. The Olmeca, as I've shown in my books and presentations, it's widely known that the jade that China gets isn't from China, it's from the Americas. The Chinese were in Central America. There was crossover between the ancient Chinese and the Americas. It's well documented. There are ancient Chinese maps of the Americas. And the Olmec that appeared in 1135 BC, when the Phoenix Cataclysm started the great dark Mediterranean Dark Age, when Atlantis was destroyed in 1135 BC, when the Tuatha De Danann darkened the sun in the second battle of Moytura against the Firbolgs of ancient Ireland. All these things happened at the same time. The mandate of heaven changed in China, and 250,000 people had to flee by ship or they were going to be killed. This is in the Chinese annals. This is in the Chinese traditions. They disappeared from history, but at the exact same time in history, we have Chinese artifacts, Chinese statuary, we have Chinese traditions and just Shang dynasty, not just Chinese, but Shang dynasty artifacts, Shang dynasty apparel, traditions, all that appears on the west coast of Mexico. They only stayed there for less than 100 years, and then they moved over to the Yucatan Peninsula, the Atlantic side of Mexico. I'm not making any of this up. Mexican scholars have already widely published this. This mass migration of the Olmec, who were just Shang Chinese, moved across to the Atlantic because they found stone cities that had been built by a previously existing civilization. And they found these round spheres. They found all this over here. So the Olmecs survived for a long period of time and everything's just fine. But these aren't Olmec faces. These are African faces on all these deals. And this is what's been widely published as well. So enter in the Mayan friezes. The Maya follow the Olmec. As the Olmec civilization was drawing to a close, and as I've published and shown you guys, I've shown you guys where other researchers have published that the very last Olmec date ever found on an Olmec stele, the steles were calendar steles, was 31 BC of our calendar. In 31 BC was the great red sky dragon that appeared over Egypt. 31 BC was the Battle of Actium, when the Romans, destroyed, when the Romans took Egypt. 31 BC was the great earthquakes of Olympia, Greece, and one of the worst earthquakes Palestine ever had. Jerusalem was destroyed. 31 BC was also the end of the Mayan culture. When the Mayan culture collapsed, somewhere in that area was a rather large group of African stock peoples. Maybe they were indigenous to the Americas, I don't know. But until this time, they don't really play much of a role in American history. They're nowhere in the Olmec friezes, no one, but they all of a sudden they start appearing in all the old. They start taking over the Olmecs, slaughtering Olmec survivors. They too brought an end to the Olmecs. And on the early Mayan friezes, you see where these blacks came in and butchered and killed and enslaved everybody. And one of the groups they enslaved were Caucasians, these bearders, these guys with backpacks that looked like they sprayed on stone. So they became the rulers. And the prevailing theory is that these African blacks came in, took over all these stone cities that the Olmec, enslaved the Olmecs, killed a bunch of the Olmecs, enslaved the Caucasians that were living among these Shang dynasties, people, or brought the Caucasians from another community in, probably Phoenicians or Libyans or Mediterraneans doing something, and they turn around and forced the Caucasian artisans to take those stone spheres and turn them into their faces. There's only like 11 or 12 of them ever been found. There's thousands of these stone spheres, but there's only 11 or 12 that were turned into these busts like this. So that's the prevailing theory. Could be wrong. I'm still waiting for better evidence, but when we put all these factors together, it looks like a cataclysm caused an insurrection. The insurrection was basically spearheaded by blacks that were in Mexico. The blacks enslaved the Caucasians, forced them to build for them and to do this artwork and all that, and then turn around. Indigenous cultures that were around at a distance only let this go on for a short period of time, because when the Maya moved into the area and absorbed the surviving Olmeca, the Maya came in and butchered the Negroid stock and the Caucasoid stock. It shows it on the friezes. They chopped them all up. They just did an end with all that. So you guys got all that history off one picture. Stonehenge. Get some water here. I haven't checked that chat in a while. Let me check this chat. Let's see. So here's the building of Stonehenge. The reason I wanted to show this is because it's really interesting. I've told you guys in my own presentations, Stonehenge was built in 3 phases. Stonehenge 1, Stonehenge 2, Stonehenge 3. It's very important you understand this. The most sophisticated version is the first one, the earliest one. Stonehenge 1, 3200 to 2300 BC. That's all pre-flood world. That's all vapor canopy world. What's beautiful about it is that the original Stonehenge is the ring and the horseshoe right here. This ring and this horseshoe. What's absolutely beautiful about this is there are no solar associations to that outer giant megalithic ring and the trilithons, the 5 trilithons. There's no solar association here. Nor is there a lunar. That comes later. It comes with the addition of blue stones, new rings, which is called Stonehenge 2. Stonehenge 2, look at this. It's after 2200 BC. Isn't this interesting that the uniformitarian establishment even dates these exactly the way we have them in Archaix? Why was Stonehenge 2 built after 2200 BC? Because the Great Flood was in 2239 BC. Worldwide earthquakes had toppled Stonehenge 1. So, about 39, 40 years after the Cataclysm, somebody went to the site and put the stones back up. It's right here. Now, more is now added. They add more. Stonehenge 2 has more stones set up. The 4 station stones right here are set up. This is critical. This is critical to understand. The original Stonehenge, which I'm going to show pictures of, was technolithic. It was absolutely computer precise. It is amazing. And the 5 trilithons form a Sumerian Arab. The Sumerian Arab is 5-point geometry based off the number 108. But it's critical to understand that the original technolithic, highly sophisticated inner horseshoe of trilithons and the ring of megaliths around it is the original, and it has nothing to do with the sun. Only after 2239 BC, 2200 BC, right here, according to the establishment archaeologists, the 4 station stones were set up. Here they are, the 4 station stones. All the solar alignments for the equinoctial and solstitial points are all based off the 4 station stones. Why is this important? Can any Archaix veterans tell me in the chat right now why it's so important to understand that the 4 station stones were not added to Stonehenge until after the flood? Why? Please, somebody get the answer right. Why? Why wouldn't they put the 4 station stones there when they originally built Stonehenge? Why? What was missing? Oh, Archaeopotamus gigantus, vapor canopies close, but you're missing it. Birth of the Sun, Jeff M. Thank you, son. Thank you, sir. What happened at the Great Flood? The Great Flood of Noah was the Typhon flood. The Typhon flood was the day the sky fell. The day the sky fell because the vapor canopy collapsed. The vapor canopy collapsing, the mesosphere flooded. The world was flooded all over, but the whole world didn't flood. So, original Stonehenge was built during a vapor canopy when the sun wouldn't have been a factor. It's just the stars and the moon. It's the original giant rings, and it's the original horseshoe. Only after 22, according to right here, establishment science, only after 2200 BC did they come add the 4 station stones. Those 4 station stones are critical to measuring all the sight lines for the equinoctial and solstitial points. Equinoctial and solstitial points only have meaning if you can see the sun. All right, so Stonehenge 3, I don't agree with the establishment here. It says after 2000 BC. We're going to drop that to 1687 BC because that's what Sir Norman Lockyer came up with. That around he even specifically said 1680 BC is Stonehenge 3, which means Stonehenge was damaged, and in 1680 BC somebody re-erected it, put it back together, and then added even more little stones for more stuff. Very intriguing for Sir Norman Lockyer in 1901 to publish that, because 1680 BC is 7 years after the Ogygian deluge, when worldwide earthquakes, according to Harold T. Wilkins in the 1950s, would have dropped a bunch of the stones of Stonehenge. It all makes perfect sense, guys. Every bit of it. Okay. So this is about ley lines. There's a lot of mystical association to the ley lines, and I want to remove that. For the ley lines to be a thing, and I believe they are, because all over one of the oldest infrastructures in the world, which is Wales, Scotland, England, Cornwall, and Ireland, and the Isle of Man. It's one of the oldest infrastructures in the world. We have evidence of roads, we have byways, ley lines laid out to precision. We have this massive infrastructure that was right there, and they were building Silbury Hill. They were building, oh man, what was that place in Ireland? The big dome place in Ireland. I can't remember. And then they were building Durrington Walls, Stonehenge. There were so many henge sites, but underneath the surface materials of the British Isles, the evidence is everywhere of continuous inhabitation going back all the way to the 35th century BC. 3439 BC to be precise is where we find the sudden explosion of urbanization, sophistication, agrarian, the sciences. We have the sudden explosion all over the world. This isn't me telling you this. I've cited all these sources. This is so many anthropologists all agree. 35th century BC, we went from the Neolithic and suddenly started building cities and navies and all kinds of shit. So this is the appearance of Enki and the Anuna. From the Babylonian perspective, it's the appearance of Oannes. From the biblical perspective, it's the appearance of Enoch. This is what we have. Funny thing here, all over the British Isles, there are all kinds of places that reflect the name Enoch, and in different dialects. So the ley lines are interesting to me, because we think of ley lines as being now energy grid and all, and that's how it's purported by a lot of people. I'm not buying it. I'm not. What I see is an ancient grid system, with the Great Pyramid being 0 degrees longitude, 0 degrees latitude at one period of time before the world was changed and completely destroyed. It's been destroyed 3 times since then. So these ley lines, for them to be a thing with all these important communities, fortresses, citadels, important standing stones, fairy stone, trilithons, cromlechs, dolmens, all these amazing structures are perfectly on these ley lines, going hundreds of miles in different directions. This would have been laid out very scientifically in the ancient world. It would have been laid out mathematically. We have texts from the old world. We have flight manuals in Sanskrit. We have traditions of the Vimanas. We have all this. We also have traditions that Noah and his sons, after the flood, went out and surveyed the world. We also have the Chinese traditions of Fuhi, where he went out with his wife and measured to precision all the latitude and longitude of the world. We have these. But we don't have to go with legends and traditions. We've got 500-year-old maps that are far more sophisticated than maps today, that are showing things that they can't possibly show if the uniformitarian view of history is true. So these ley lines, to me, are the fossil evidence of a infrastructure that existed in ancient times. And this is a carryover. Ley lines are evidence that there was a technologically advanced system in place in the world that put these things on these lines for that reason. Sight lines. These could have been flight lines. They could have been railway systems in ancient times. You guys know Paul Cook showed the tracks on Malta. We had a female, I can't remember her name, but she showed the tracks outside of Austin, Texas. There's tracks in New Mexico. You guys know what I'm talking about. These are really peculiar tracks that are fossilized on the surface. So there's evidence of technology everywhere in the ancient world. And the ley lines, they're only evidence to me of technological sophistication in antiquity. Okay, lost cities of the Americas. So here's another very intriguing thing I wanted to show you, this map. The reason I want to show you in this map is because in the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st millennium BC, in the Americas, these are the urban centers. Look carefully at the map. What did I recently show you about a month, 2 months ago, when I did a presentation showing you about 400 old maps? What did I show you? Some of the oldest Dutch and Chinese maps the Pacific was considered the center of the world, making the Americas on the opposite direction. All our maps today show the Atlantic as the center, and the Americas are on the left, and Asia, Europe, and Africa are on the right. But many of these older maps were Pacificocentric. Look at this map. This is just a modern rendition, but look at the distribution of technologically advanced civilization. These civilizations were employing technolithic expertise in the building of their structures. If you haven't really studied Tiahuanaco and Pumapunka, you don't know what I'm talking about. You don't know the building precision that was being used to build these citadels and these cities and walls and fortresses. Some of it, we just can't even replicate it today. Look where they face. South America's huge, but how come all the huge civilizations are on the Urubamba, which is right here on the Pacific coast? Facing what? Right here is Easter Island, where all the giant Moya are. So we have right here in Mexico, here's Ecuador, here's Veracruz. I can't pronounce it, Oaxia, whatever you pronounce it. Here's Mexico right here. All these pyramid cities. These are Lucurmata's down here. Lucurmata is a pyramid in Tiahuanaco, right off the coast of Lake Titicaca, right here in South America. It's a pyramid. Acapana, excuse me. So we have all these pyramid building cultures down here, but they all face the Pacific. The only reason this is colored in right here is because the Olmec were here first on the Pacific coast, but then I guess their explorers went out and found all the empty cities that were all over there in Veracruz state on the Gulf of America, and the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic side. So they relocated. But they're all in the Pacific. And with Easter Island and the island chains of Oceania and Melanesia and Polynesia and Micronesia and New Zealand and Australia and Indonesia, there's no end to all the island hopping that could have been done. It looks like most of the traffic wasn't over the Atlantic. Most of the traffic was over the Pacific, which explains why it looks like California has always had a Chinese population. Jade carving. This fine Mayan death mask owes much to Olmec tradition. It was made from more than 200 pieces of jade. So interesting, because now it looks like the Chinese didn't get the jade indigenously. They got the jade from the Americas. A lot of trade going on. Okay, we talked about the green children. I read you the Spanish account of 2 green children that appeared. Here's the English account. It's pretty curious. Here's the English account of the two children with green skin that appeared hundreds of years before the ones appeared in Spain. The green children. An even more mysterious tale of sudden and incongruous appearance concerns the green children of Woolpit in Suffolk, England. This strange tale was told by 2 medieval chroniclers, Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh. One autumn during the reign of King Stephen, 1135 to 54 AD, coming right into the Middle Ages after the Dark Ages, some harvesters came upon 2 children, a boy and a girl, in a ditch. They were clad in garments of a strange hue and unknown texture. But the most remarkable thing about them was their green skins. In his account, Ralph of Coggeshall added that nobody could understand their language. They were taken to the home of Sir Richard de Caunay at Wykes, where they wept bitterly and refused all food except green beans. That almost sounds like a joke. The boy died within a few weeks, but the girl survived, gradually lost her green hue. That's really interesting. She's no longer in the same environment. gradually lost her green hue and spent several years as a servant in the household of Sir Richard. She was said to be rather loose and wanton in her conduct, but eventually she married, and the course of the rest of her life is unknown and will no doubt remain so. According to her story, she and the boy had lived in a green twilight world that they called St. Martin's Land. Just before they were found, they had been transported from there in some kind of magical manner. An analysis of this story yields some interesting points. The estate at Archaix certainly existed, and records show that there was a family named De Calna there in the 12th century. William of Newburgh was well acquainted with the gullibility of fellow chroniclers, and freely admits that at first he refused to believe the tale. I thought it ridiculous, until I was overwhelmed with the weight of so many and such credible witnesses. Ralph of Coggeshall claimed to have gone as far as to interview Sir Richard de Calne and his family, who confirmed the story. It seems most likely, however, that the country people might simply have embroidered a story about the discovery of two ordinary stray children. In medieval times, green was regarded as a supernatural color, and green beans were also thought to have special properties. It is also the favored color of aliens in science fiction. This is all gaslighting right here. Little green men and all, and the fairies were green and all that. Arriving by UFO. You're being gaslit now. All I really wanted to show you was that there was historical verification of the green children in Woolpit from a couple different sources, and there was also two children found in Spain in a cave. This is very interesting because the children that were found in Spain in a cave actually claimed they came from a sunless world, which would have made sense because once they came outside and they were exposed to the sun and the sunlight, that would have been an object of curiosity to them, probably of fear. And once the girl learned the language, it would have been one of the first things that she said. She says, "We don't have anything like this. We come from a sunless world." And this kid, and over here, it's curious that this girl here conveyed that they came from a twilight world. So Thor Heyerdahl, one of my heroes, Sumerologist as well, he wasn't trying to hear that uniformitarian BS, talking about there's no such thing as trans-Pacific and transatlantic voyages in the ancient world. But we know from our own research that the ancient world could have never happened the way it actually did without the helolithic maritime empire. Shipping guilds were everywhere in the 18th and 17th and 16th century BC. And there was all kinds of commerce and intercourse transcontinentally. Thor Heyerdahl, using the same materials that were used in the Urubamba Valley of South America, which were also found in the Egyptian Nile Delta, which were also found in the Indus Valley of India, Pakistan, which were also found in the Tigris-Euphrates Basin, which were also found in the Yangtze Valley of China. Thor Heyerdahl realized that the ancient world built ocean-going vessels out of river reed. He learned and published this. It shocked everybody. The same genus of reeds grow in all 5 valleys. Somebody planted that. They all basically made the same types of ships. So he made the exact ships they made out of reed. Thor Heyerdahl in the 1940s and 50s also realized it's not just the same reeds and the same style of ships. It's the same type of people. They're all short of stature. The South Americans of the Urubamba Valley, the ancient Egyptians of the Nile Valley were called the Melampides. They were short of stature and had black feet because of the black rich soil of the Nile. The people of the Indus Valley were short of stature and were identical to the Egyptians and identical to the South Americans. The original Sumerians of the Tigris-Euphrates basin were identical to the Egyptians and identical to the South Americans of the Urubamba Valley and the people of the Indus Valley River. They're all identical. They all had straight black raven dark hair, black eyes, smooth skin, unable to grow a beard, olive-colored skin, unable to grow a beard, coal black eyes, raven dark straight hair. All these people. And then the exact same people were also found in the Yangtze Valley of China, the Yellow Valley, the same reeds. Thor Heyerdahl made the connection. The helolithic maritime empire was real, and they were shipping goods and people all over the world among these 5 valleys. And these 5 valleys had intercourse. There was a lot of intercourse. Thor Heyerdahl not only theorized these things and connected the dots, Thor Heyerdahl built a few of these rafts just like this and sailed across the Atlantic, sailed across the Pacific, and then sailed around the world. Improved the uniformitarians wrong. He made them eat crow. That's my hero, Thor Heyerdahl. So the ancient here's an ancient Mesoamerican relief of an elephant. You know that's controversial. There's no elephants in there's no elephants in the Americas, but there are elephant effigies in the Americas. I believe this one right here is in China, but there are no elephants in China. However, the Chinese came into contact with elephants on the Silk Road. On the Silk Road, they saw camels, elephants, all that. Here is a stylized elephant in a Mayan ruin. Easter Island right here. This is the bird cult effigies. They're also found at Göbekli Tepe. Wait a minute, Jason. Easter Island's only dated at 12 centuries ago. Yeah, I know. That's uniformitarians for you. Göbekli Tepe's 10,000 years ago. Yep. Bird cult must be real popular. Last all that time. These are the Nazca lines. Again, we're dealing with the same thing with the ley lines. We're not quite understanding what we're seeing. Now, ancient aliens proponents are going to tell you these are runways for UFOs, ancient aircraft. I'm not buying none of that. I'm not buying any of that. There's some type of infrastructure here. We're seeing the residual effect of somebody was trying to do something after a collapse. After the disappearance of benefactors, maybe a cargo cult decided, cargo cult culture decided that, hey, if we build all these things that we saw them build, maybe they'll come back. So this is this terracotta statuette called the Sleeping Lady was found in a Maltese tomb. The tombs on Malta and the temples, I'll show a couple of them here, they date to about 2200 BC. They were destroyed when the Mediterranean flooded. We know this because of the distribution of the megaliths and the temples. It all goes one way. You can easily tell by looking on in the photographs of underwater archaeology off the island of Malta. You can see that a tsunami swept over the land and deposited great blocks all on one side of the island under the Mediterranean. This is also associated with the Venus statues, but the uniformitarians are going to tell you that the Venus statues go back 40,000 years to 15,000 years ago. They're called the Venus statues. This is a Venus statue too, but because she's laying down, they're claiming it's a lot younger. Here's original Stonehenge. When it was laser tolerance computer, I'm talking about it was awesome. Doesn't look anything like it does today. So the Aubrey holes you see here are not a part of the original Stonehenge. The blue stone pillars, the little tiny pillars you see in the middle, those blue stones are not a part of the original Stonehenge. The original Stonehenge is these five trilithons in this ring. And the highest trilithon, the tall trilithon right here to the surface of the ground is exactly 23.5 degrees. Archaix veterans, you know what that number represents. This ring represents the number 360. In my book Anunnaki Homeworld, I show you how to geometrically decode mathematically what the ring, what the cycles that this ring and these trilithons are conveying to us. But the Aubrey holes and the station stones out here, these are all new additions. They are not a part of the vapor canopy architecture of Stonehenge. They are helolithic additions. When the vapor canopy collapsed and the sun was in the sky, they came back and added the Aubrey holes, and they came back and added the station stones. Again, oh, here's a really good example here. Do you see how the station stones show you Midsummer's Eve, midwinter sunrise, the solstices, the equinoxes? None of this has anything to do with original Stonehenge. None of it. These are the station stones that, according to even uniformitarian archaeologists, weren't added until after 2200 BC, which is after the sun appeared, after the vapor canopy collapsed. So this is a bristlecone pine. I just want to show you, I just want to give you a demonstration of uniformitarian gaslighting. So the bristlecone pine of the American West, oldest of living things, has revolutionized the technique of dating ancient objects. From its rings, dendrochronologists created an 8,000-year yardstick against which to check the accuracy of radiocarbon dating. The new dating overturned the theory that the megalithic monuments of Western Europe had been copied from Mycenaean tombs or Egyptian pyramids. They are older than either. This is uniformitarian reasoning. What have I told you in the early years? In the early years of my presentations on YouTube, one of the tenets that I've told you about is you cannot take an unknown and compare it with another unknown and then claim that you know something. That's exactly what's happening here. The bristlecone pine of the American West, oldest of the living things, has revolutionized the technique of dating ancient objects. From its rings, dendrochronologists created an 8,000 ring. Let me tell you something. Bristlecone pine isn't as old as you think, because this book was published in 1978, but in the 1990s, it was discovered that dendrochronology is completely inaccurate and that all previous books that have ever cited dendrochronological material must be reanalyzed, because it was discovered in the 1990s that tree rings are not an indication of how old a year is. Tree rings are only an indication of how many times that tree experienced a growth spurt during a rain season. And because some years have no rain seasons and other years have 3, you'll get no rings to 3 rings per annum. This changes everything. You cannot take an unknown like tree rings, which you can't even measure by that no more. You cannot take an unknown and measure it against carbon-14, which is an unknown. How do we know it's an unknown? Because anytime they date something, they take 60 samples, and then they go with the 20 that agree with them the most and throw away the other 40 and tell you that it's conclusively proven that this was carbon-14 dated at 2500 BC. Yeah, the uniformitarian dating models of relative dating methods are all bullshit. Every single one of them. If you remember, in one of my Göbekli Tepe videos, I showed you the scam of one of the greatest heroes in the evolutionary natural selection uniformitarian movement is Leakey, Dr. Leakey, the female, the daughter. I can't remember her first name, but She invented the whole pre-pottery Neolithic deal. And as soon as she did that, it just took off like wildfire, and all the uniformitarians started borrowing it. And now everything is dated to these impossible dates like Göbekli Tepe. It's just ridiculous. She totally freestyled that, but it's not uniform. They're allowed to say this culture was pre-pottery Neolithic. And even though this culture over here has all the exact same effigies, artistic styles, it's at the exact same depth in the ground as this one is found because it's found somewhere else. They're allowed to say that the pre-pottery Neolithic phase for that culture would have been very different than this culture. Saying something is Neolithic and then saying something that is post or pre-pottery Neolithic and then claiming that it's dated to this period because it's now pottery Neolithic is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because it's so arbitrary. It's only true for whatever you say it's true for. It's dumb. Miss Leakey did that. Screwed up the entire uniformitarian dating model. So yeah, you can't take an unknown and measure it against another unknown and then claim to someone that you know something. And carbon-14 is a huge unknown. If it wasn't such a huge unknown, why were they desperately trying to use dendrochronology to verify it? Oh, I feel I'm ranting. I feel that rant. No. Flat Earth Zoomer. Doesn't all cultures have pottery? No, there are Neolithic cultures that just never invented pottery, and then there's other cultures that did invent pottery, and anthropologists are now using Leakey's system of dividing the pre-pottery from the pottery as if there is a uniform time in the world when all of a sudden, oh, you know what, pottery exists, so let's date all these things, man, accordingly. It's so dumb. It is so dumb. So here's more evidence of uniformitarian gaslighting. This is a cave painting. Now, in 1837, using the exact same pigments that the ancient Egyptians used 3,000 years earlier, you can buy the same ingredients on the Nile from all the plants and the dye makers right there in Egypt in 1837. They used the same dyes that were used. They bought them, procured them, and then they used those dyes to forge the cartouche of Khufu in the Davidson's relieving chambers. And Colonel Howard Weiss got famous after this for verifying Herodotus's hearsay claim that the Great Pyramid was built by Khufu. So here is a cave painting right here. See the two hands? And in this, here's a cave painting. Here's what uniformitarians tell you. No evidence for this whatsoever except for their own dating system, which makes everything far older than it actually is. 27,000 years have passed since unknown artists painted this piebald horse and another partly visible at the lower left in a cave at Pecmerel, France. The handprints around the animals are thought to represent the hunter's magical hold over his prey. They may as well be writing scripts for Hollywood. They don't know what those hands mean. They don't know anything. That could be a votive offering. Putting your hand there could be a votive offering to your deity, thanking him for giving you that artistic ability. I just freestyled that, but it could be equally true. They don't know what the hand means. They don't even know what this horse means or all these dots around the horse. They don't know. They just make these things up. Based off the research of Lewis Spence and many others, in my Anunophiles videos, I have shown a lot of evidence that Cro-Magnon were very sophisticated at one time. They have the anatomy of a sedentary race, just the opposite of Neanderthal. And yet Neanderthal hunted them and ate them. And only because of a cataclysm. Whatever that cataclysm did, it stranded Cro-Magnon man. And the only survivors of Cro-Magnon man were those that were in the caves. Exactly what we find in the book of Revelation. When the destruction of the world seems to be falling apart and the phoenix appears and the world's shaking and there's all kinds of destruction happening and all that, what happens? Book of Revelation says that kings and serfs and all men will go running and hiding into the caves and into the mountains to hide from the face of God in the sky. It's the same thing we found with Cro-Magnon. And the Cro-Magnon had trousers and button-down pants. They had pockets. They wore belts. Their women were very petite. They were tall, but they had short arms. How was that possible? You wouldn't be able to survive very good, especially against Neanderthal. It was possible because they were technologically advanced. They were a sedentary race. I'm not making all that up. That's all well established. So when we study Cro-Magnon, we're seeing a future version of ourselves in the future after a future cataclysm. When we look back at Cro-Magnon, we see the survivors of that future cataclysm coming out of the caves and the rocks. First place you make a home is the cave that you hid in. You got nothing else to do but to draw on the walls, so you draw all kinds of things, but you're not drawing like a caveman because you're very, very artistic. You're not just drawing, but you even have the knowledge on how to make the necessary pigments and dyes, the red ochre, to survive thousands of years. Hold on. We got to do this again. 27,000 years have passed since unknown artists painted this piebald horse. Oh, man. Shut the F up. This is evidence of machinery 2,000 years ago in the ancient world. This is a Greek machine that made this statue go in circles, amazing the public. You see that wheel? See that wheel? See that arrow? See the pulley system? This statue moved. This statue was made to pour a cup. It was a fountain. You see the dotted line? The water went up through the statue and the cup was always pouring. The dog moved as well. Look at all this. This is 2,000-year-old machinery. And what I tell you from the beginning, what did Jason tell you about the Delphic Oracle, the Oracle of Didyma, the Oracle of Dodona, the Oracle of Olympus? What I tell you about it, guys, they were intelligence agencies. They weren't predicting the future. This is why when a visitor came to the Oracle, they were specifically made to wait 7, 14, or 21 days. They had to stay. That's why there was campsites at all the oracles. People had to stay. They didn't know this, but the oracles themselves had runners, and they had people already positioned throughout the city and in other cities across in Ionia, from the Aegean, in Boeotia, and all the ports were covered, and captains of ships were always paid good coin for any information they brought overseas. Yeah. Runners were where do you think Marathon came from? They ran everywhere in the ancient world. And these runners would come in with their satchels full of news tidbits, and when the information somebody sought came, all of a sudden, oh man, stewards of the oracle would come out. Mr. Brashears, it is time. And you get all excited because the Oracle of Delphi has saw you worthy, meaning they accepted your gift, because the first thing you had to do when you arrived was give them a gift. And that gave you the right to wait for your answer. Yeah, they had a real good setup. And then you'd go in there all excited, and it's all stage. It's all theatrics. And they would have some drop-dead gorgeous girl, probably half naked, out of her mind on entheogens and whatever drugs, and she would sing and it would murmur and probably drool and shit, and you would think it's something supernatural, and they probably have music going on, and they would have stewards, and then she would have attendants, and it would all look really good, and you're in awe because you're in the presence of the Oracle of Delphi, and you're just tripping balls looking at this giant 8-foot-long python snake. You've never been that close to a large snake before. You don't even know it's not even poisonous, but you don't know this. You're in awe. You're taken in because they make you go through this tunnel. You gotta, before you can even go into the ritual chamber, they make you bathe and wash and clean, and you got to go through all kinds. They got to put gold and frankincense and myrrh on you, and you got to walk in there, and it's real. They really worked on people back then. You've been waiting 2 weeks to find out if you can even engage in a contract with a shipping guild in Miletus, which has a reputation of being good, but some people complain about them. So you just don't know. So before you invest too much of your money and let those ships come over here and take your produce to a foreign country, and then you got to wait for your money to come back, you want to know from the Oracle of Delphi if you can trust this company. And what their runners found out is that that company is about to liquidate all its assets because the owner's wife recently died, and he's going to just take all the money he's made now and he's going to move, go buy him an estate, and he's going to live the rest of his life in paradise. He's made enough money, and your contract's already there, and they've accepted it. The Oracle has basically found out from people overseas that everybody doing business with him is about to get burned. This is how the oracles worked in the ancient world. And people found out their information. They were rarely wrong because they were intelligence agencies and they were filthy rich. So, and they did things like this. This would have baffled people in the ancient world. Man, this is Zoltan all over again. Here it is, 2,000 years old. Yeah, man. Oh, it's over 2,000 years old. This is Hero. Yeah. This is Harold's, one of his scientific deal. This is in his writings called Pneumatics. You guys have seen I think I got a picture of it. Look at this relief. A Roman reaping machine used in France about 2,000 years ago. It has a comb of steel blades mounted on the front of a cart. Look at that. And you thought this was new. It's a whole reaping machine right here. Look at this. 2,000-year-old bobby pins, safety pins. Those are really nice. We don't even have safety pins that nice today. Look at this. We thought this was new. Isn't that something? So the windmill, which helped grind grain like a granary, all this is going on underground, these gears. The windmill is helping grind grain into powder to make bread and all that, meal and all that, hominy, whatever. So the mill came to Europe late because as early as the 7th century AD, these mills were already being built and used in Persia, ancient Iran. That was almost 14 centuries ago. Roman engineers were famous for building machines to do all kinds of things. They built machines to do all kinds of things. Roman engineers they're like the Army Corps of Engineers. They built machines just to do heroic things in architecture. Look at that, man. Look at those chocks. Damn. Yeah, man. There's nothing new under the sun. This is a primitive version. This is just primitive art describing what the Greeks were doing. This is Greek fire. It was used in Constantinople, but the Christian Greek navies had a weapon on their ships that other cultures feared. They were able to spray some type of phosphorus that would burn the hell out of people's ships fast. It's still a state secret today. It was Greek fire. Look at the sophistication of the Antikythera computer. It was fossilized, but look at it. The X-ray shows the differential gears. This isn't just geared, it's differential gears. It's a whole nother level. Yeah, this is 2,100 years old. This statue right here is almost 2,300 years old, found in a shipwreck. Look at the detail. Look at the art. You can imagine what it would look like when it was completely whole. This is the goddess Demeter. This is Greek classical art, found by a sponge diver. Kind of begs the question. Let's go back and let's go look at that. This is Greek art 23 centuries ago. So what the hell happened in the 6th century AD that the entire world quit making statues, art, cities, pillars, building anything, writing books, doing anything until the 900s? And then in 1000s, all of a sudden, we've got cathedrals, we've got primitive churches with Jesus as Lord of the Mushroom, and we got all these weird Christian stories that have nothing to do with the gospel, but they're all of saints that can fly, and saints that can change, saints that do wizard stuff, saints that fight giant worms. Yeah, I'm not making this stuff up. This is the Middle Ages. Middle Ages is so weird. What happened during the Dark Ages that stopped the entire world? Because the statues that came out after the Dark Ages are primitive, comical. The artwork looks like DC comics from the 1970s. This is Chinese. This is Chinese Shang dynasty stuff. It's pretty nice. There's Chinese elephants. I'm just showing them because they're beautiful. Now, even though these are Chinese, this is Chinese art. What do you see? Use your eyes. What do you see in the patterning on the elephants, even though these are admitted to be Shang dynasty Chinese elephants found made out of bronze in China? What do you see? I'm going to wait for the answer. Covered in detail is close. What kind of detail, Ryan V? Covered in detail is very close. That's where I'm getting at. But what kind of detail? Where is that detail found in the world? Because this was found in China. Ancient Americas. Thank you, Sylvie. JC3 got Maya. Absolutely. Absolutely. Twilight Mist. Absolutely. Listen, that's exactly what these sigils are. This is seen on Mayan reliefs everywhere. Everywhere. This stylized art is very, very Mesoamerican. But this was found in China. This is an astronomical clock tower built in the 11th century. It is water-driven gears. This is amazing right here. It has a globe up here that was made to turn. It's a celestial sphere. This is mechanical. This is ancient China. Look at that. 900 years ago, they were building these amazing clocks. They just showed them all where where the stars were going to be, where the moon's going to be, where the sun's going to be. All this right here. But they didn't start building them until the 11th century. What I tell you about the 11th century, all the churches, all the cathedrals, all the cities, all the universities. It's when the Normans began basically building everything. It's just amazing. Everything just appeared. All the urbanization in European cities, everything took off right there at the 1100s. Looked like it took off in China too. Here's a small toy deer from Veracruz. Right there. The wheels. That's what's interesting about this, is the wheels. No evidence exists of any wheeled vehicles or draft animals in the Americas. But they had wheeled toys. This is an ancient Egyptian statue of a scribe. Ancient Egyptian scribe statue. This is not a modern. This was found in Egypt. This is not a modern artistic depiction. These are school benches from the Sumerian city of Mari. Now, in other presentations, I've told you about Mari. Mari was the seat of Mitanni. The kingdom of Mitanni were the foreigners called the Amorites. These were the Amuru. They were known as Westerners. And the first thing that they did when they moved in here, they took over Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria. They took over Hattusis, the Hittites. They took over northern Syria and their Urartu, and they literally brought a massive amount of scholarship into the Near East. It is known as the Amorite syllabaries. And this right here is an actual school in Mari. Those are stone benches for the students. Kumar capital, Angkor Thom. Again, approximately 1200. How come not 500 AD, 700 AD? Why? No, it's 1200 AD. Why? Why did you guys over here in Cambodia just start building these magnificent Angkor Wat, Angkor Thom, these massive, beautiful structures and castles only after the Dark Age? We'll get to Angkor Thom again. This is a game board from the Sumerian city of Ur, Mesopotamia. This is a game board. The game board is very, very interesting because it looks just like Mayan mathematics. This is from Sumer, the city of Ur in Mesopotamia. And yet I'm telling you now, what you're looking at looks very, very close to the Mayan arithmetic system. I'm going to show you a picture of it. Matter of fact, let's not waste time. Let's go find it now. Let's go find that right now. You need to see Mayan mathematics. Or did I already show it? No, I didn't show it. Damn, I got a bunch of pictures here to get through. Look at that symbol there. That represents 0. The Mayan mathematics is very simple. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the line is a 5. 6 is a line, which means 5 plus 1. 7 is a line plus 2 dots for 7. 8 is a line of 5 plus 3. 9 is a line of 5 plus 4. 10 is 2 lines, 5 plus 5. It's very simple. This is Mayan mathematics, and that oval right there is a 0. You see the oval and you see the dots and dashes. Let's go back and look at that picture again of that game board. Look at all these dots. And look at these ovals. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying it's very similar. Very similar. The reason this is important is because there is a school of researchers who believe that early Sumerian pictograms and ideograms are identical to early Chinese pictographs. There's a school of thought, and they got charts, and they've got their homework, and it's saying around the 31st century BC they are identical. That's interesting because we have another school that believes that the ancient Maya are descended from the Olmec, who were the Shang Chinese, who are the 250,000 refugees that are immigrants that had to flee China in 1135 BC because the mandate of heaven had changed. And the families that were attached to the prior emperor had to go. 1135 BC was Phoenix Phenomenon Day. So when you go back far enough, we see these huge connections between the Chinese, the Sumerians, and the Maya. Another wheeled toy. I got a bunch of pictures that are just show. This is the Indus Valley. This is Mohenjo-Daro. This is a Sumerian relief. Right here. Okay. Wow, they really messed up. You see the editor's note right here? It said, the tagline says, these scenes indicate steps in the education of an Aztec youth. Okay, they're talking about these down here because this is Sumerian. I know for a fact. I've talked about this in my published books because these are the Sumerians. They could not grow facial hair. They had smooth skin. Now, what's interesting is that in the laws of Ur-Nammu, we find out that special legislation had to be passed in the Sumerian cities to protect ordinary-sized humans from the Lugals. The Lugals were called the Big Brothers, and they were Sumerians too, but they were so huge that they could easily take advantage of other people. And because they did take advantage of people in business dealings and they intimidated people, they had to pass laws against the Lugals. This frieze right here shows you the difference in size in Sumerians. These guys are standing up. These are full-grown men standing up. And these are Lugals sitting down, who are even sitting down, they're way taller. They're way taller. These are visitors. These are Sumerians and visitors. How do we know? Because you got a bearded Semite in here right here. Here are two guys with beards. They're not Sumerian. They're coming from somewhere else. These are Sumerians. Yep. But right here, you got a Lugal. You got a Lugal sitting here. A lot of these are Lugals at the top. So there's no Lugals on the second and third tier. They're only on the top tier. Yeah, but that's the Sumerian name for big man, is Lugal. Plural is Lugalim. A drinking bowl from the Etruscan tomb. Look at this. Look at the artwork. Look how amazing this artwork is from an Etruscan tomb. Etruscans almost look like Egyptians. Etruscans were Italy. This is ancient Italy. There's a castle. That's a castle right there. Chariots. Looks like he might be a falconer. That was real popular back then. They're subduing somebody. There's a falcon. There's geese. Oh, there's the wing. Always a winged deity right there. Maybe it's the phoenix. Maybe not. Anyway, this is Etruscan. So the tagline says a group of gods and priests from the Sumerian temple, but they don't know that. They don't know that. These right here are statues. The Sumerians are venerating whatever these statues represent. But these statues are very interesting because they have these gigantic eyes. And I have discussed this a lot in previous presentations. When an Oriental people or a non-Caucasian people, when they represent in their art Caucasians, they do so by over accentuating the traits that are very different from their own. The eyes are not Asiatic. They're Caucasoid. So they make them even larger, just like anime cartoons always show Caucasians with big round eyes, even though our eyes are not. We just don't have the Asiatic epicanthic fold that gives it the almond shape. These are Caucasian. These are an Asiatic people depicting Caucasians. Here are the beards, they're dragon-faced, and the large eyes. Because this wasn't quite recognized after a lot of intermarriage over 1,000 or 1,000 years to 15 centuries, legends, when the Jews were in Babylon, they invented the legends of the Watchers. The Watchers were before the flood, and they came and took all the daughters of men. What they did was merge their frame of reference with pre-existing traditions and stories that they found in Babylon, and they came up with the Enochian books and the traditions of the Watchers that took the daughters of men and gave forth giants. But it was just what they were looking at were statues of giant ideals. The same is true when Caucasians represent Asians in their art. What do? They give them a little slit for an eye. They don't have slits for eyes. They've got almond-shaped eyes. But everybody always over-accentuates the very features that are different from their own. Again, old Sumerian statues. This is interesting too. Just shows you on Crete, here somebody had a wagon shaped like a horse with wheels. That's how they move. They move these amphora around, these jars. Here's some beautiful art from Crete. Shows a giant octopus. Look at this. Minoan soldiers. You can't tell me those aren't Caucasians. Minoan soldiers. Right there. A relief sculpture showing servants preparing and serving dinner. That's just some of these pictures are just general interest. I knew you guys would like to see them. On the bottom is a kitchen. They're just cooking bread. There's ovens. They're mixing things. It's a kitchen. Up here is pantries. They're just serving a dignitary or something. Just a kitchen. Here's a butcher shop. That's pretty cool. There's a butcher shop. A Roman butcher shop. No, that place stunk. Here is a poultry seller. In ancient Rome, here's a woman that sells birds. Well, no, I see a pig there too. I see a pig hanging upside down. It's pretty cool. Nice, it's beautiful artwork. What happened? Why is all the old pre-Dark Ages artwork so beautiful? Here's an ancient Briton in a war chariot. Very artistic. These are Dacian soldiers. I got a couple more pictures of Dacians. Here are Dacian soldiers attacking a Roman fortress. The Dacians look like some Viking-looking guys. They look like some Viking-looking guys, man. I got some more pictures of their faces. And that's really odd because the Romans are on the defensive and they were hardly ever on the defensive. A Persian defense wagon, like a primitive tank. So when Rome was ending toward the end of Rome, the Colosseum was a bloodbath. This is a mosaic from the 4th century AD, right before the fall of Rome, right before the Dark Ages. It depicts gladiators in battle. These dudes fought to the death. It's gladiators in battle. You've seen the movie Gladiator. Here's where gladiators were fighting wild animals. They just messed off all these tigers and shit. It's terrible. Here's a chariot race in the Circus Maximus. This is also Colosseum. Having a chariot race with all the people watching. Very artistic. You see people in the stands. It's crazy. What happened to our ability at artwork? This is a Roman forum. This is an artistic depiction of what a Roman forum would have looked like. The forum was the hangout. The forum is where you went in a Roman city to get the news. What's going on? Or where everything's located. Who's the guy? Hey, man, you guys got some pot? Is there anything to smoke around here? You found all that out at the Roman forum. Hey, man, what are the police up to here? Hey, what's illegal here? What's going to get me thrown into the Colosseum here? The Roman forum. Hey, man, Hey, are there any redheads in town? This is where you got all your information. It's the Roman Forum. This is where people came to get famous. This was the social media of the day. If you had a message, you could get on one of these little blocks. You could stand on one of these blocks, and if people started gravitating to you and listening to you, and you got a voice, you would have a name. Sometimes people will call you out to debate. Sometimes hundreds of people will sit there and listen to you. People would donate bread, cheese, grapes, all kinds of things. Sometimes money, coin, whatever. Clothes, leather, copper ingots. They would just donate things to you. The forum is where everything happened, and they were patrolled by these guys right here. Sometimes you would just see. I don't think Roman soldiers were in Rome too much. The legions were kept out. They had a special police force. Not all of them were Praetorian. I don't know, but they would have had some type of police force. So this guy here, Praetorians were like special forces police force, but actual Roman soldiers were kept outside of Rome. Let's see. Probably garrison. All right, this is pretty gruesome, but this is Romans executing Dacians. You can see what the Dacians look like. Bearded guys. They know what's going on. They already know they're dead. This would have been this. I mean, this really happened. This really somebody recorded it. They all know they're dead. They're getting their heads cut off. That guy's head's already off. They look like Vikings. This is a bust of a Dacian noble, AD 341. This is before the Dark Ages. No one was producing any statuary even on this level within 200 years after the Dark Ages were over. No, nothing on this level. A Teutonic prince. That means he's German. Teutonic prince. Look at that strapping young fellow. All right, this is the construction of a church in the mid-1200s. This is way after the Dark Ages. This is well into the Middle Ages. Here they are building a church. Look at that hammer. Almost looks like hammers today. With a nail puller. Look. Yeah, it's got a nail puller on it. That hammer has a nail puller on it, just like that one does. That's a hammer with a nail puller. Not much has changed. Here's the Children's Crusade of 1212 AD. Now you're going to be gaslit. Here's the official story. Many of its participants died of hunger or sold into slavery. That was just made up. The Children's Crusade was just made up by church and state to account for the fact that hundreds of thousands of children vanished across Europe. There is no way in hell that all these children just decided to leave all these European cities and get together and march as a group and stay unified as a group and make it all the way to the coast and try to get to the Middle East because of a rumor that the adults can't win the Crusades, so the Bible must mean the children of God. We're the children of God, so let's go. It's all stupid. It's all gaslighting. Shit never happened. Researchers that have looked into this know that it's a genuine mystery. Something happened. All these kids disappeared, but this story is bullshit. But what's really interesting is the year 1212 is famous for two things. One, it is the very first time that the word Tartaria entered onto a map anywhere. And I've shown that on my channel. The original book from like 700 years ago talks about Tartaria officially enters as a known state, a consortium of a whole bunch of peoples all come together under one umbrella, Tartaria under Genghis Khan. And it was 1212 AD. After 10 years from 1202 of Genghis Khan getting the Tartars together and all the Mongols under their banner. So 1212 is also known as the Phoenix year on the 138-year timeline. It was the appearance of the phoenix. And a lot of things happened in 1212, because we also know in 1212 about 310,000 people in Sweden were washed out to sea from a tsunami. So I think it was Sweden or Switzerland, something. One of them, whichever one's bordering the ocean. We got that in Chronicon. Let's see. Wheels within wheels. At least that's the story. It was a tsunami. Again, here's an ancient Sumerian royal. Oh, this is the same. You just saw this earlier. I showed it with the Lugals. This is a part of the Lugal frieze. This is a different part of it, but it's showing a wagon with wheels right here. Showing it even 4,500 years ago, they were using wagons and carts and wheels. Not much has changed. More wheeled toys. Some beautiful Sumerian artifacts from the royal city of Ur. 4,000-year-old stuff. Now remember, Leonard Woolley was very specific. When he excavated the tombs of Ur, he said that the most sophisticated metalwork, the most beautiful pieces were in the oldest tombs. Why is that, Jason? I don't understand. It's because what I've told you, most of Sumerian civilization was post-reset. It was post-cataclysm. Now, the entire Near East, listen to me, Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, Tigris and Babylon and Euphrates, Assyria, Elam, Babylonia, Mohenjo-Daro, Larak, all of Syria, all of Mitanni, Mari, Hattusis, Urartu. What is the common denominator here? I'm going to tell you what the common denominator is. It's right there, written on this page. A civilization built on clay. Think about that. Built on clay. Sir Leonard Woolley, when he was excavating along the Tigris and Euphrates, in Ur and Uruk, in Nimrud, Burs, ancient Babylon, all throughout that area, what did he find? He found evidence that the entire civilization was built on about a 15-foot layer of clay. And that underneath that clay was another civilization that dated to about the 35th century BC. Couldn't figure it out. But why all of a sudden was Babylon, Assyria, the Babylonian cities, the Assyrian cities, the Amorite cities, the Syrian cities, why were the Hurrian cities, why were the Hittite cities all built on clay? Because of the collapse of the vapor canopy. Because the entire world had been flooded. All these surface materials had been scrambled. All the Tepe sites and all the Huyuk sites of the pre-flood world were completely rapidly buried. As the world was suffering earthquakes and the vapor canopy was everything filled up. With all this water falling from the sky, all these soil materials and silts and all this runoff just filled every nook and cranny. And the entire world was almost like flat except for the mountains. And when the vapor canopy collapsed, the sun comes out and burns like whatever, and it basically hardened the entire world. And within 200 years, it was a whole new surface. So what do? They used what was available to them, and they built their ziggurats and their walls and their citadels, their castles, their homes and their bathhouses, their sanitation systems, all out of clay bricks. Because clay wasn't used in the ancient old pre-flood world. The Technolithic period, clay was not used at all for building materials. It was raw stone. It was absolute. The Great Pyramid wasn't made out of clay blocks. None of the Giza pyramids were made out of clay blocks. You don't find clay blocks until 1,000 years later when they're building pyramids in ancient Egypt. All those pyramids have collapsed. The reason the Sumerian cities that we have discovered were built on clay, a whole clay stratum found by Sir Leonard Woolley, is simply because the whole world died and they had to rebuild. And when they did, they rebuilt on a new land surface. And all the former habitations, like all the Tepe sites and all the Huyuk sites, were completely buried. More than 15,000 tablets written in cuneiform script have been found in the archive just at the city of Ebla, northern Syria. Documents such as this tablet accounting wages for palace workers have provided archaeologists with a massive detail about life in the city of Ebla at the height of its power. So that's interesting. Only reason I wanted to show this was a lot of people think that just because, 15,000 tablets have been found at Ebla, and like 25,000 tablets have been found at Byblos and Rashamra, and more tablets at Mari, and more tablets in Nineveh. They think that we have all this access to a massive corpus of material about the ancient world, and we don't. Not about history, the things I'll reveal in Archaix. Most of these tablets are tax records. Most of them are inventories, are ship manifests, codified laws, pieces of legislation, stuff like that. Egypt's bearded queen Hatshepsut. I don't know much about it. I just thought this was pretty interesting. She's not the only one. They actually say that Nefertiti might have done the same thing. Oh, here she is right here. The strange disappearance of Queen Nefertiti. So, Akhenaten, something happened so profound in Egypt that Pharaoh decided to change his name from Akhenaten to Akhenaten. He venerated Amen, the hidden one, the great god of Egypt. But something happened, and he decided to worship the sun, the sun disk, Aten. His queen was Nefertiti. Now, I've shown research where Queen Nefertiti was an Amorite princess. She was Amorite. She was from Mitanni, the place I just showed you, Mari, where the Mari tablets are from, in the Near East. So she disappeared from history. No one really knows why. There's all kinds of speculative theories, but she disappeared before Akhenaten disappeared. I believe the prevailing theory is General Horemheb killed Akhenaten. And this was during the Amarna reign. And the Amarna complex is no more. Amarna, I showed you the map of Egypt, all the pyramids in the north and in lower Egypt, and in upper Egypt in the south, all the Egyptian cities and where they buried the pharaohs, not in pyramids, but in the Valley of the Kings. And there's 450 miles in between them. So Amarna was in the dead center of them. And Amarna only lasted for like 30 years. Built a huge palace there, but his reign didn't last hardly at all. That's Nefertiti. She had 2 daughters. That's Akhenaten. His reign ended, and I believe Pharaoh Horemheb became the next pharaoh after killing Tutankhamun. Well, it was Tutankhaten. He was a young boy, but he changed his name to Tutankhamun and went and abandoned Amarna. But it doesn't even matter. He died, and I think General Horemheb became the next pharaoh. So the engineering on these ancient ships, the Phoenician ships, I've tried to stress this on my videos before. People who are always amazed by how the ancients build all these buildings. Man, do you not have a clue that the engineering required for a vessel that goes across the sea like this is far more complex than building any building? Yeah, these are buildings. These men lived on these things, and they had to survive on them, and they had to be storm worthy. These are buildings, but these are buildings that are designed to float and move on water. Old Greek. Let's see, this is from 350 BC, so this is almost 24th century old artwork here, Greek. Almost 2,400-year-old artwork found in the tomb. Who'd have thunk that the Vikings are the origin of the game of chess? The game of chess is thought to have been inspired by military maneuvers. This Viking chessman, carved from walrus ivory, dates from the 12th century and belongs to what is believed to be the oldest complete chess set in existence. That's a cool little chess piece right there. Antikythera computer. That's what it looked like when it was cleaned in 1901. This is what it would have looked like originally. But the box would have been solid. You wouldn't have been able to see all that. It was a solid box. This is the famous Boudica, Queen of the Britons. This is a bronze. This was put near the House of Parliament in the year, go figure, 1902. She opposed the Romans. Truth about Nero. Oh, man. Do I need to go into it, man? I don't really need to go into that. So Nero's been demonized. And what I really found astonishing about this book was that it told the truth. It told the truth that Nero has been demonized a whole bunch by the publishing world when actually he's really not guilty of all those things that they say he did. So I'm not going to get into a whole lot of it. I'm just going to tell you that Nero killed his wife. During Nero's reign, Nero attacked Jerusalem. During Nero's life, Jerusalem was under siege in AD 66. There was a lot of problems in Rome with the Jewish people that were there. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Cicero goes into a little bit, but Nero might have killed one of his previous wives, and he remarried. When he remarried, it was to a Jewish woman named Poppaea. When she was pregnant, there was a lot of tension in Rome between Jews and Romans for whatever reason. A lot of it's been covered up, washed over. It is rumored that Nero killed his wife, his Jewish wife. Nero was later killed himself and all that stuff, but Nero was demonized in history, not because of burning Rome. He didn't play a fiddle when Rome burned. All this is bullshit that was made up later, but it was made by those who were in control of the publishing industry who wanted to demonize Nero as much as possible for his role in the death of Poppaea and his treatment of the Jews in Rome. Nero and his second wife, Poppaea, historians agree that although Nero loved her, he probably caused her death by kicking her in a rage when she was pregnant. I don't know if that happened or not. That's the story. I don't know. I mean, I can offer an alternative version. Romans had recently discovered that a tremendous amount of their wealth had been filtered to Jerusalem. 2 years later, Jerusalem was burnt to the ground. Romans were all kicked. The Jews were all kicked out of Rome. He finds out that his Jewish wife might have been a participant. I don't know. But so much of history has been obscured, we just don't know. But I know he's been demonized for things that he didn't really do. This is what I found interesting, that this book actually said this. The view of Nero enjoying the martyrdom of Christians. In fact, it's misleading. Nero never persecuted Christians, but rather showed a tolerant curiosity to these people who worshipped an invisible God. Sounds like a Roman to me. Romans didn't give a damn what you worshipped, who your God was, as long as you rendered under Caesar. That's all they cared about. Here is the Arch of Titus. The Arch of Titus shows all the holy objects that the Romans took from the temple in Jerusalem when they razed Jerusalem to the ground and destroyed the temple in AD 70. The Arch of Titus shows the holy objects that were taken from the Jewish temple. Romans were pissed at the Jews. Roman city of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Here's the victims laying in their beds. They never even got out of their beds. They just got buried alive. Early Christianity's biggest battle was against Mithraism. because Mithraism was the same story of Jesus and the disciples and the crucifixion and the sun darkening. It was all in the story of Mithra. Most of the Roman soldiers were all acolytes of the Mithraic faith. This is why it was Christianity's biggest battle, was trying to show that Christianity was different when it wasn't. It was the same. Christianity is a repackaged Roman religion. Oh, let's see. Oh, this was the Mithraeum in Rome. The Mithraeum in Rome is basically the old churches. Excuse me, these are old Roman churches. It even says that right here. It says they were built just like Christian churches. Mithraism was based off sun worship. This is why you have so many Christian references in the New Testament to Jesus being the Son of God, the Son of Righteousness. Because it's even spelled S-U-N, the Son of Righteousness. So much solar imagery. All right, so this is really interesting, man. This is a 2,000-year-old depiction of Roman soldiers being treated after battle. This is a medical relief. These soldiers here have all been hurt in battle, and while the war is still being fought, while the battle is still being fought over here, the wounded are cared for instantly in the Roman legions. This shows how beautiful Theodora was, wife of Justinian. Remember, Procopius in the Secret History said that she was wicked. She had torture chambers set up to where people that pissed her off, she had her men abduct them, and she just, at nighttime, she just spent time with them in her dungeons. And then Justinian, Procopius says that Justinian was the devil. He says he was the devil on the throne. He was not an ordinary man. He was the devil. Theodora was an actress, prostitute turned empress. This is according to Procopius, the Secret History, who was alive at the time. He was a member of the court. So in 1001 Arabian Nights, we have the stories from old Arabic traditions of the mythical bird called the roc. It's a lot like a phoenix, so big it can carry elephants away. Why did I have this here? Oh, I had this here because I wanted to show you the ridiculousness of early Christian. In the very early Middle Ages, we had some really weird Christian beliefs because the focus wasn't on Jesus. The focus was on the saints of the church. We had flying saints. We had saints that were able to call fire down from heaven. We had saints that were able to predict the future. We had saints that were Lord of the worms. We had saints that were fighting large lizards. We had saints that could go invisible. The church had all these weird saints. I'm telling you, Christianity was so bizarre coming out of the Dark Ages. It was so bizarre in the early Middle Ages and all these churches. And it took about 200 years for church to get real sophisticated again and start focusing on doctrines. And then Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and all this stuff. And they pulled away from the earlier Middle Ages tenet of Jesus being the Lord of the mushrooms. What it is. It's crazy. So you women are going to like this. The mystery of Murasaki, excuse me. So probably the most epic, magical, the greatest piece of Japanese literature in history was written by a female. It's also the most lengthiest at 600,000 words. Way bigger, like twice the size of War and Peace by Tolstoy. Written by a female almost 1,000 years ago after her husband died, she wrote this compelling novel. Epic, massive, gigantic novel. And she wrote it in Japanese during a period when all the men were trained to write in Chinese. The Japanese script was for females and for servants. The men of ancient Japan 1,000 years ago wrote in Chinese. So she wrote this huge epic. It's called the Tale of Genji. The Tale of Genji. That's it right there. The Tale of Genji. How did I skip that? Where'd it go? There it is. All right. So the Tale of Genji, it's like the world's first blockbuster. That's what it said right here. But it was written by Murasaki Shikubu, and her husband had died. She was widowed, and she took to writing. And it's there's over 10,000 commentaries, 10,000 different writers in the last 1,000 years have all put out books just scrutinizing and going through this epic masterpiece this woman wrote. That's a testament to Chinese literature. But one of the greatest stories and the oldest and largest stories coming out of Japan was written by a female who was just needed something to do after her husband died. All right. Let's see. So this is the Doomsday book. It's spelled Domesday, Domes, Domesday. I think it's pronounced Doomsday book. It's huge, gigantic. But I'm going to tell you the history, what's not told. So the Domesday book records every chicken, every pig, every dog, every cat, every house. They went into your tool barns. They counted all your tools. How big, how many hectares or whatever they were measuring back then. What was the unit of measurement? It was something different. It wasn't acres. I can't remember. Skins, or I can't remember what it was, but they measured everything. The Doomsday book displayed on the casket in which it was originally kept. It consists of 2 volumes. One contains the account of Essex, Suffolk, and Norfolk, the most prosperous counties at the time, and the other account of the rest of England, save most of the northerly counties. So this giant book came into existence because of the Normans. When the Normans invaded in 1066 and conquered Harold, they brought with them a people who were absolutely genius at what they do. These people had already done similar things in other European countries, and especially in the Middle East. When they came with the Normans, I'm talking about Jewish clerics, Jewish clergy. I'm talking about Jewish administrators, Jewish tax assessors, Jewish accountants. When everywhere the Normans went, they took these people. So these Jews went through and, as expert administrators, literally went through all of England and recorded this Doomsday book, and it recorded everything. They had how many tools, what kind of tools you had, how much clothes you had. They took the estimated value of every individual in England in those counties. Now, they never made it to the super far north, Scotland and all that. They never made Wales to Scotland. And there was also 2 places in England that were exempt. I found this really interesting. I'm going to read it for you. The Doomsday book survey did not cover 4 counties in the extreme north of England: Northumberland, Cumberland, Durham, and Westmoreland, nor a few towns such as Winchester and London. For those of you who don't know, London is called the city. London isn't even a part of England. London is 100% owned. I don't even want to tell you who owns it. You guys know. The same people that wrote the Doomsday book. So, yeah, they bought the crown a long time ago. Oliver Cromwell helped them do all that. So London was exempt from this behavior. Why? Because these people set up in London and they've been there ever since. Now that England now that the UK really doesn't have a lot to offer these people are retributive. They have a bone to pick with the people of the UK, and it's unfolding as we speak right now. It's been going on for quite a few years now. They have a bone to pick with these people because of how many times they've been kicked out of England. how many times that their designs have been overturned in England. But yeah, the dome. That's a lot of history here. It's not for this. It's not for this video. So the Cathars and the Waldenses right here. The Cathars and the Waldenses are two more people who were Christians coming into the Middle Ages. The church, Rome, had to reassert its authority. Imagine this. Rome collapses in 476 AD. The Dark Ages happened by two back-to-back cataclysms that happened in the same year, 522 AD. One of them lasted 25 years. Justinian darkness. The Dark Ages happens, and now all of a sudden, there's no development, no history, no nothing for 350, 400 years. Now, come in the 900s, things start stirring and stuff. But all of a sudden, Rome needs to reassert its authority. What was Rome doing during all this period of time? Because they didn't exterminate the Cathars and the Waldenses, who believed in a different version of Christianity than the Vatican, than the official Roman Church. They didn't exterminate them till the 1100s and 1200s. Why didn't you exterminate them in the 900s, in the 800s, in the 700s, in the 600s, in the 700s? Remember, Christianity was getting very sophisticated in the 300s, 400s, and early 500s of a Anno Domini calendar. Then you have this long hiatus, which I believe was a vapor canopy period, where everything was put on standstill and everything got more primitive. And then now that the church was able to muscle its, now it had a military arm, it's able to do things. Now you want to deal with the survivors of the Gnostics, the survivors who made it all this time, the Waldenses and the Cathars, who didn't believe in a physical Jesus, didn't believe all that whole story was spiritual. So they exterminated them. Exterminated the Almericians as well. That's these people. They didn't follow the Roman Catholic doctrine either. These people, the Almericians, believed that all men and women were potentially divine. What? These people were errants. They believed that all men and women were potentially divine. Yeah, man. Pope couldn't have that. Oh, that's one of the books, Mysteries of the Past. Let's see. So in Plato's description of Atlantis, one of the 40-something date monikers concerns the ritual of wrestling with the bull. This is mentioned by Plato at the time. Well, we already know Minoan and Mycenaean culture were doing just that at that time in the 13th century BC. So it's just another proof that Atlantis wasn't Younger Dryas. Here's a three-dimensional portrait of a pre-Columbian artist portraying a possible Phoenician. It says he looks more Semitic than Indian, but this is from Guatemala. Look at the beard. This is from Guatemala. There's been several, like the Uncle Sam statue. There's been several bearded figures that look like Caucasians found in the Americas. This is found in the Americas too, but it looks African. This is Hagar Keem in Malta. This was all destroyed in 2239 BC with the Temple Gigante, whatever it's called, also in Malta. In one of my videos, I show under submarine distribution of the megaliths. It's obvious that a tsunami passed over Malta and destroyed everything and buried everything. And a bunch of the megaliths are all on the eastern side of the island, right off the coast underwater, where scuba divers have found them. They're all in the same place because the tsunami just blew everything off the island. That was 2239 BC. So Tarxian, this is also on Malta right here. This too was destroyed in 2239 BC. All this is Malta. But what do you see here? What does this look like? This is only less than 5,000 years old, but it sure has a lot of features that look real close to Göbekli Tepe. Why? Because Göbekli Tepe looks a lot like kivas in the New World. They're just old style kivas from the Old World. Look at this. This is on Malta. This is not Göbekli Tepe. Sure looks alike. This is a Harappa. Actually, this is a Harappan city. This is not Harappa. It's a Harappan city. This is Mohenjo-Daro. Hill of the Dead. It just goes to show you that after the cataclysm of 2239 BC, they were still smart. They were able to do urban planning. But what's interesting is they have to build their cities on top of a 15-foot layer of clay. So what did they do? This entire city was built of clay bricks. You be quiet, Bella. I'm busy. Clay bricks. Pumapunka wasn't clay. Tiahuanaco wasn't clay. The Great Pyramid, nothing in Giza was clay. Everything was made out of solid stone. The oldest stuff is made out of solid stone. Stonehenge was made out of solid stone. Here is at Tiahuanaco. Here's one of the statues that shows it's a pillar statue, anthropomorphic, but the guy's elbows are at 90 degrees and his hands are at 90 degrees with his fingers folded over the front, just like Göbekli Tepe. Just like the pillar at Göbekli Tepe, the fingers fold over. This is a bad example. On my Göbekli Tepe videos, I show good examples of the pillars at Easter Island and Tiahuanaco that look just like Göbekli Tepe. This is a Huyuk. It's a Huyuk site. I'm claiming that this is vapor canopy architecture because the people didn't want to be on the ground. They're saying it's 8,000 years old. I'm saying it's 3,000 years younger. They didn't want to be on the ground. They got it looking like it's a desert terrain, but these structures weren't built in a desert environment. This is thousands of years later. Now, this is what it would have looked like. And if you notice, humans did not want to be on the ground. Every building is accessible to every other building through ladders and chutes and windows. I'm calling vapor canopy. There's things on the ground they didn't want contact with. A pair of Sumerian worshippers. They're not Sumerian worshippers. These are just how Asians depict Caucasians. Round eye. You remember Tonto? Tonto said round eye. I'm not like you. You are a round eye. This is the sarcophagus lid of Lord Pakal Votan. Ancient Aliens is going to tell you that this guy is an ancient astronaut blasting off in a rocket going into space. These guys are absolute buffoons. What you actually see here are Mayan fire sigils going up to a firebird at the top. And Lord Pakal Votan is looking through an apparatus at the sky. You can't see it right here. I've already showed it in other videos, clear pictures of it. But at the top is the phoenix. It's the firebird, the thunderbird, the Mayan thunderbirds right here. And you know the phoenix represents something celestial in the sky that represents the end or beginning of a cycle. That's the phoenix. The Mayan sky watcher right here is looking through an apparatus at the sky, looking at the phoenix. Flame symbols are coming down the sides. If you look right here, you see the crossed bars? I've shown this on multiple presentations. The Olmec and the Maya considered the crossed bars to be the symbol of the closure of a cycle. No good, ancient alien guys. No good. Here's another good example of the huge, vast distance in desert between Thebes, the Valley of the Kings, where all the pharaohs were buried, and 450 miles away where all the pyramids are. Jerusalem's closer to Giza than Thebes is. This is the inside of the Grand Gallery, an old photograph. If you look closely on the bottom left and on the bottom right, you can see the niches where some type of giant wheeled mechanism went up and down this at high velocity. These niches were for like a spoked wheel. Something went up and down here creating pressure. This is a gaslight right here. They're not showing you actual photographs of tools because they don't exist. They're showing you illustrations in a pyramid builder's toolbox. Can you believe this? They're still trying to promote this BS. copper chisels, no matter how you harden them, can never, ever even have any effect on that Tura limestone. It's too hard. So such BS. This monument was not built using those tools. This was built by machines. Beautiful artwork. I'm just showing out. Here's the beard, stylized beard. His beard kind of looks real. Solid gold. Oh, this is a comb. You can't, they're not showing you the spokes, but this is the handle on a comb. All the spokes are down here. That's beautiful. It's a Greek on horseback defending himself against two Scythians, barbarians. That's a comb. Wow. That's beautiful too. The splendor in the jungle at Angkor Wat. For 400 years, the encroaching jungle hid a secret from the eyes of man. In the central plain of Cambodia stood the crumbling ruins of the civilization of Angkor. The reason I found this interesting is because Angkor Wat, covered in all this, it's like vapor canopy. It's like vapor canopy vegetation that grew all over this and just stayed there because why? It's in Cambodia and it stays at a pretty good temperature all year. It was hidden in the jungles really fast. But these places weren't built until after the Dark Ages were over. These constructions were made in the Middle Ages. Dated to 1186 AD, right here. The reign of Jayavarman VII. Some of these were built in the 1200s. Yeah. Why didn't you build them in the 700s? Why didn't you build them in the 600s? Why didn't you build them in the... Yeah. I'm also wondering if the Maya, the Chinese, and the Cambodians here, and even the Thailands, people of Laos too, I'm wondering if a lot of these masks and a lot of these costumes that they wear, all these monsters on their pillars and stuff, are reflecting the vapor canopy world that their fathers told them about, or their grandfathers told them about. I mean, wouldn't some of these creatures not want to mess with you if you looked like one of them? Or if you looked like you were menacing? But if you looked like an ordinary human, they knew you were food. So these guys here at Angkor Wat, this is just 900 years ago. They're having a blast. They're gambling right here. They're cockfighting right here. This is a relief from Cambodia at Angkor Wat or Angkor Thom. They are cockfighting. There they are. Oh, here's a gaslight right here, man. You see this guy here? You guys see here? I told you I was going to expose some gaslighting. Okay, there's about 4 or 5 of these that have been found in the Americas. This right here has deep meaning to it. And what they're telling you right now is not true. I'm going to read it to you. This is gaslighting. Seated in an alcove hollowed out in the front of a basalt altar hewn from a single block of stone, a man wearing a sort of crown holds in his right hand a rope, which is round the wrist of a figure shown on the side panel of the altar. This figure is probably a prisoner who is to be sacrificed to the Olmec gods. Now they're not showing the prisoner. He's on the side of the altar. This custom persisted until the time of the Aztecs. They're talking about the custom of sacrifice now, not talking about what you're looking at. So, who carried out human sacrifice by cutting out the heart or by decapitation. The alcove may represent, this is gaslighting, The alcove may represent the open jaws of the jaguar god, whose eyes and canine teeth appear in the upper part of the altar. The crouching figure would then emerge from the mouth of the animal, which could be, I can't pronounce that, Tepeyotili, I don't know, or heart of the earth. The symbolic meaning of this scene is probably now lost forever. The altar is from the principal Olmec site at La Venta. Absolute gaslighting. BS. This guy is coming out of Jaguar's Maw because in all the ancient Native American traditions, the old world died. But in order to survive the old world, they had to go into the underworld. And the underworld God is represented by the jaguar. They survived in the underworld and they came up into a new world and repopulated it. When they came up, this guy is coming up out of the ruins of an old world, and he's coming from the underworld and he's coming up. This is the origin of the Kivas. The Kivas all had a square hole with a plug in it at the bottom of it because the ancient Native Americans believed that when when they're at the Kiva doing the Kiva ceremony, that block must never be removed because that block had to be put there to keep all the evils of the old world intact because the ancestors came out of that hole. They had survived something terrible, and when they came up from the underworld, they plugged it. So to keep the cycle going, these are the story. This is why the Kivas were important in ancient Native American traditions. And in Central America, the jaguar was the underworld deity. He was the patron god of the underworld. And coming out of the jaguar's mouth is an expression of leaving the underworld and coming into the world of the surface. This is where we find how unusual Göbekli Tepe is, because it too is Kiva style architecture, as I've shown in two of my videos. And the traditions near Göbekli Tepe are all about humans having to go into the underworld in cities that were prepared for them by King Archaix of Phrygia, which is right there where Göbekli Tepe is located. And we now know it is not a matter of opinion. It is not speculation. There are 59 underground cities found intact under Turkey. Where are all the Huyuk sites? Where are all the Tepe sites? They're in Turkey. Everything fits perfectly. In the ancient Americas, some of the heroes of the old world were the ant people. Why were they called ant people? Because they burrowed underground. They were the safe ones when things were going not so well on the surface. So anyway, this right here is total gaslighting. Right here. This is very symbolic to the Native American cultures because it's an origins. It's a statement of origins. This structure represents the old civilization of the ancient past from which the fathers came from. But the man coming out of the jaguar mouth as he's coming out is because the fathers, in order to survive, had to come out of the underworld. They hid in the underworld, and that was the great division in time, the period spent in the underworld. Let's see. Man, how far we got to go? I lost track where I'm at. Okay, I'm right here. So here's another Ancient Aliens piece. Ancient Aliens guys always use this right here. This guy's supposed to be an astronaut. He's sitting in some type of device. Yeah, it's so dumb. So dumb. This guy is bearded right here. You can see it clearly. He's also holding, is this Göbekli Tepe? Look at that handbag. Oh my God. This is only dated to the Olmec period. Same handbags that are seen on Göbekli Tepe pillar, which is supposed to be 10,000 years old. is only 2,000 years old right here on this pillar. It's only 2,000 years old where it's seen on Assyrian reliefs. No, excuse me, it's only 3,000 years old on Assyrian reliefs. Yeah, the handbag has been found all over the world, everywhere. There's a couple YouTube videos that show the handbag all over the world, and the date is always the same. It's after 2600 BC and all the way to about 1000 BC. Nothing, nowhere is 8000 BC, except Göbekli Tepe. And that's why I'm a critic. You'll never get me to agree that Göbekli Tepe is 8000 BC. It's just dumb. All right. That's the wrestler. It's Olmec. There it is again. It's a close-up. That's an ancient astronaut getting ready to take off, do something. Okay, we already saw the Mayan mathematics. That's Mayan mathematics again. Oh, yeah, here it is. What I tell you about the Mayan calendar? 360-day year. Verification of the Mayan year, 18 months of 20 days. Whoa, wait a minute. 18 times 20 is what? Oh, it's 360 days. Mayan long count is 1,872,000 days, divided by 13 ages called Bactans, which are 144,000 days each. Beginning in 3113 BC in the month of August, it counts down to the year 713 BC, which is 864,000 days which have passed, which is 144,000 times 6. 6 Bactans have passed before something unusual happened and the sun retrograded 10 degrees, and all of a sudden every civilization in the world in that year of 713 BC changed their calendars from 360 to 365 days. Ever since then, every year is 365.25 days, and continuing with the remaining 1,872,000 days of the Mayan long count. The Mayan long count does not end in 2012. It ends in November 2046. Just an interesting tangent. I published all that. I wrote all that in 2009, but my book was published in 2011 that talks about all that. More Mayan friezes that are kind of interesting, just weird stuff. Here's that observatory again. I told you that it's probably Phoenician. It is in a Mayan ruins, but this was built way after all the Mayan structures. This is the New Delhi rust-proof iron pillar. Another very interesting thing. This pillar in New Delhi, India, doesn't rust. It's made of iron, and what's amazing about it is that it's 800 years old. So it dates to 1200 something. I can't remember. It's like 1200 AD. The date for this is like 1200 AD, which is amazing because why? It's the Middle Ages. It's the Middle Ages. Oh, I'm sorry. It dates to the 5th century AD, which would be right before the Dark Ages. Showing you that there was a more advanced culture before the Dark Ages. New Delhi pillar. Gold mask found in the ruins of Troy by Heinrich Schliemann. Isn't this interesting? In Namibia, Africa, Southwest Africa, in the year 1917, an engineer named Make discovered on the side of Mount Brandberg a painted shelter. Look at this. What amazes me is that uniformitarians are going to say, "Oh, this is 15,000 BC. Oh, this is 15,000 BC. This is 12,000 BC. Oh, this painting right here, this would be 8,500 BC." But on this one here, they're real quiet about. They're real quiet about it. It's called the White Lady. It's the wall paint. It's the make shelter. It's called the White Lady. I guess paint art, but the title, the wall painting, is called the White Lady. Here it is in Africa, deep Africa. No mistaking a Caucasian female. Why aren't you saying 30,000 years BC? What's going on? I don't get it. I found this really interesting. Tartaria. I found this really interesting. 1961, 3 terracotta tablets were uncovered here. Tartaria, 220 miles northwest of Bucharest. These 3 terracotta tablets bearing signs which are clearly not simply decoration. The archaeological bed in which they were found dates back to 8,000 years. There you go. Go with that BS again. Or more to New Stone Age period, Neolithic. The signs are similar to others of about the same age that have been found at Troy and at Warka in Mesopotamia. There is nothing at Troy or at Warka that's going to be 8,000 years old. It's so dumb. That's a uniformitarian BS. I would love to see those tablets to see what they look like, but they're going to be dated about probably 3,500 BC at the oldest. And I thought that was interesting about Tartaria tablets. Has nothing to do with the Tartaria culture. Not that old, but still interesting. Popovo Pyoji Bogomil funerary monument. The reason I wanted to show you this was this is in the necropolis of Popovo. How do you say it? Poje? Wow. They are generally attributed to the Bogomils, a heretical Christian sect. Isn't that interesting? Why would I want to show you this? Why on earth? This is the last picture for this video. Why would I want to show you something like this that's possibly only 11 or 12 centuries old? Why? Look at this artwork in the back. To me, it is absolutely ridiculous that people still hold on to this 10,000-year-old Göbekli Tepe deal. These right here are only 11 centuries old. 11 centuries old. They technically, by scientific standards, date to the exact same period as Easter Island, because anthropologists tell us and archaeologists tell us that the Moai on Easter Island are from the 1,000 to 1,100 year period. Yeah, that's Middle Ages. And yet they have all the same symbols and effigies and artistic styles as Göbekli Tepe. Wow. Just can't make this shit up, guys. You just can't. That's the last image. We made it. We made it. I have not been checking my chat. I've been running my mouth. I just went hard on this video. Let's see. 3 hours and 15 minutes again. That was totally unanticipated. And I must have bumped something because I see my camera view. Yeah, there we go. All right. All right. So we have knocked out 2 videos of the 3. Now, this is going to be a series because I have an unlimited amount of books to pull from, guys. This is going to be a series. I just wanted to do 3 of these back to back. These PowerPoints, back to back for the Monday show. So with Flat Earth Dave, I wanted to get all this out the way, get 3 of these out the way for Flat Earth Dave, so we can get ready for that show. But that doesn't mean I'm done with Enigmatic Earth. This is just all 3 parts of Enigmatic. Well, it's 2 parts of Enigmatic Earth. Part 3 of Enigmatic Earth is tomorrow. But I'm still going to continue the Enigmatic Earth series. You got more of these long presentations showing all this stuff because I have way too many books to pull from. I got a lot of stuff. So we're going to continue this. Meanwhile, I am hungry. So let's see if I have any announcements. Do I have any announcements? The only announcements I have is if you want the 1,054-page Chronicon with 400 chronological charts, the link is in the description box. If you want any Archaix merchandise like new shirts and all, like this shirt, if you want any Archaix, go to my Shopify site. The link is in the description box. If you're trying to get all kinds of different Archaix related PDFs, PDF downloads, Archaix Academy, if you want Archaix books, published books that I've actually written, any of the drives. We have a bunch of drives with all kinds of stuff on them. The links are in the description box or the pinned comment. And because I only ask you guys maybe once every 6 months, I actually ask you guys to like one of my videos. I'm going to do that now. If you really like this video, hit that like button. That's all I'm asking. Other than that, I'm going to eat. Love you guys. And we got part 3 tomorrow.